Chris, is Mark still in the picture? Mark's still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a snack and he connects it. Oh, and he gets a 3rd as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Coldzera, the man, the myth, the beast.
ZywOo, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. Oh my God, ZywOo! Unbelievable!
Right, on this show, we want all the smoke. And of course, especially in the early segments like the petty grievances, we're known to get a bit hot under the collar, a little bit irritated by some of the annoying things in the esports scene. Quite frankly, just bothered by some of the things out there that sort of get to us, make our experience in esports not as fun. And you know what? That's exactly what I don't want to happen to you guys if you're enjoying cannabis products. So instead of having hot, irritating smoke sort of annoy your lungs in order to enjoy the chemicals such as THC within cannabis, you could try the freeze pipe because it's food safe glycerin chamber. You just put it in the freezer for about an hour. And after an hour, it's not even, by the way, you could put it in the beginning of the show. By the time the show's ended, it'll be well cold enough. Then when you smoke through the bong, dab or oil rig, obviously oil rig, shout out Evil Geniuses, sponsored by Chevron. But yeah, if you just, that's just one of the things they sell on their website, and it will cool the smoke by over 300 degrees, meaning basically you don't have that irritating sensation. So there you go. That's the cooler way to smoke cannabis, quite literally, and also turn your cannabis smoking experience into a cannabis smoking experience with thefreezepipe.com code LFN for 10% off. If you want to support us and you enjoy smoking cannabis and you have a bong or would like to, this is a great way to support us. Thanks. Over to you, Semmler.
Well, thank you, Thorin.
Not bad, eh?
Not bad.
I've always got something in the locket. It's all good.
Usually, you know, I mean, the thing is that you're so experienced. I was literally having this conversation the other day where somebody was asking me, you know, just like how are you so good at these deliveries? And I'm just sitting here going like, okay, well, isn't it kind of like that old Bruce Lee saying where it's just like, I'm much more afraid of somebody who's practiced a single punch 1,000 times than somebody who's practiced 1,000 punches once. And I'm like, dude, Thorin has so many reps over so many years now doing these intros, forming an idea, being able to start at a point, end at a point, get there in a concise way. I mean, dude, it's just reps. It's just get time on the mat, get time recording and speaking and practice. So it's like, I'm not even shocked.
There's actually a famous saying like that says something like the master has failed more times than like the apprentice has tried. And the whole premise is like, if you're the apprentice, you don't see that. You think, oh, they're just better than me, isn't he? It's like, yeah, but he might have actually tried like 500,000 times. And so if people don't know, like, this is even something I know we did a show about. I think it might even have been like a 4 Horsemen episode like a year ago or something. And I remember on it, we were discussing the concept of like, I think it was, if you remember, I think it was the story when there was that like esports certification or something like that. And basically the premise was people were talking about the idea that this would be a way to like prove yourself in the industry and get your start. And I made the point that like, that's not how you do it at all. There's actually a social way you do it, which is you become part of the scene. You go to events, you network with people, you make relationships, you find people that are cool, and that becomes social proof. And when I did this, Semmler, all the fucking comments were morons telling me, well, that's easy for you because you're naturally charismatic and always had lots of friends in the network. It's like you're telling the person who had none of those things, started at 0 and learned it, and is trying to tell you, you can learn this, it's a skill you can learn. No, but it was naturally like that for you because the problem is people only see the finished product. They don't know what it took to get there. That's the problem.
Well, isn't that the problem just in general? Just
of course,
until you try it for yourself, you're not going to have any freaking idea. And then you're going to realize that it's reps. By the way, this is Revenge by the Numbers. Welcome, everybody. And I want to before we get into it, I want to really give a big thank you to everybody who's been subscribing and also supporting us. We got a lot of Twitch subs last week. We were doing the watch party. That was great. And also on Discord, loads of people have been signing up. So really big thank you for that. And real quick, just a quick show before we get into the show. If you want to support the show directly, if you want to ask questions on the show, because we answer questions every show, you can subscribe on Discord. There's going to be a link below in the description, wherever you happen to be watching. And if you subscribe on Discord, we get a great rev share there, and it goes directly towards supporting the show and making all this possible. So big thanks to everybody who's been supporting us so far. It's awesome. It supports the whole network, and well, it means that we can keep doing shows like this. So thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it. All right. What you just said, it's so funny because we can have all these segues all we want, right? because what you just said there just really made it interesting in the sense that there is a lot of value to what you just said, as in networking is everything. Show up and start networking and doing it. That pretty much does seem to be the way that these guys are getting into it now. Because we were just talking about this on camera, off camera, before we went live with the show, where it's just like, who in the fuck is Ryan at V and where the fuck did he come from? Like, what has he done apart from just post memes online, give shit comments, and I guess just befriend everybody? Like, I guess
look, he had
the most awesome drinking partner at all of these after parties for anybody to give this guy the time of day, because he just seems like such a shitbag. So I'm like, I'm just
Here's
mystified.
the thing, Semmler. Look, obviously, first of all, he positioned himself as just like a fucking fan of Cloud9 or whatever, which I did say is like about the least. It's about the least original identity you could have as a fan of a Counter-Strike from North America, but okay. And now also, by the way, the part about that
sucks already did that as well. So I mean,
here's what's garbage. He came along, I think in like 2016 or something, but tried to act like he was like the OG Cloud9. Like, shut the fuck up. Just actually shut the fuck up, you idiot. And then secondly, obviously he did have a website, which like obviously now became Dust2 US essentially, if you look at the staff, and was a bunch of like NA people doing stories. The problem with that though is I will bring it back to when you say like, what the fuck did he do? It's like, you're not qualified. You don't have the experience and the reps. Therefore, you're not actually like a master in terms of you've done the work, and you don't have any real world qualifications. Yeah, who the fuck are you? Like, that's the one thing I find annoying, Semmler. I get why they do it, but if there's a type of person in the scene who is a journalist or an influencer, and what they see is that me and Richard have a slight overlap into their world, like we use things Twitter for drama or to do influence, and they think because they do that, that means me and them are not only equal, but they're as good in my areas that they've never done a lick of work. So you get these people who are influencers who think they can tell Richard Lewis whether his journalism was good or not. How the fuck would you know? Like, Richard Lewis has actually for real forgotten more than you'll ever know about journalism. Like, that's the one thing I find annoying, mate. It's like, it's one thing if you just stay in your little lane, you just an influence, you have shit opinions about everything, whatever. There's plenty of people like that. But it's this thing where they want, like, here's what I hate essentially, Semmler. It's actually a sign of the times. Young men want respect for what they think they will do, but won't give you respect for having literally done what they hope to do. When you can't have a society like that, because think about it, you're tearing down the person who did do it, and then you expect them to give you the respect they earned by doing it before you've done it. That's nothing, guys. Like, the joke in real life, if you don't know, is back in the day, the same dynamic would have played out, but the second you come up as the young guy, you get bitch slapped down. You get taught by the society in all levels. Like, you ain't it yet, mate. You got to earn this, you know.
Oh, that's fascinating, dude. Because all right, so I'm going to school in the mornings right now for Swedish, and so there's a lot of international people there. It's a lot of different cultures. It's a lot of different religions. There's a lot of different everything, right? And there's this, and it's getting rammed home at every level now. And I kind of had to put my foot down because they were like, okay, we're going to make a list of like things, you know, that you need to be able to get along with everybody, you know, in a group and all that sort of thing. And at multiple points, there's just like, you have to just respect everybody equally, you know, because that leads to everybody getting along. And, you know, so you need to respect everybody equally, and everybody deserves respect. And I just had to put up my hand and be like, actually, I mean, I disagree pretty hard with this, because you don't give respect. You earn respect. Respect is earned because you did something. You actually put in work. You stood out from the others. You actually deserve respect. You don't get respect by default. That's not how this works. You know, who the fuck are you? Like some 2-bit journalist online who hasn't covered a big story in his life apart from what, writing match reports and fucking getting drunk with people at after parties, I guess. It's like, who the fuck are you? You haven't broken any stories the way Richard Lewis has broken stories. Richard Lewis gets respect because he is one of the most storied journalists in esports, and so he deserves the respect. He's earned the respect. Anybody else coming out, like, I mean, unless you've done something to actually earn somebody's respect, you don't just get respect by default. You get my courtesy. I'm not going to be rude.
Some civility, maybe.
That's different. Some civility. Right? We'll be polite. Oh, hey, how are you? Who are you? Oh, cool. You're here to do this. Awesome. Being polite does not imply giving respect. That's not the same thing. Respect is when it's like, oh, okay, hold on, you've achieved something. I don't know, you're a player. You've won some tournaments. You won something on LAN. Okay, then now we can have it. Now you have my respect. Like, okay, you know, that's not easy. Winning a LAN trophy. Okay, fine. If you're just winning online cups, so it's like, okay, fine. Then your respect is like down here. You know, maybe you're a step up from an FPL guy. You're winning online cups, but you haven't won a LAN yet, so you don't get the LAN players' respect.
No, the player analogy is good.
See how this works? It's just this really weird thing where it's like at every level.
Here's the
now,
analogy,
people are
Semmler.
just
This
being
is
told
like
that they have to give respect to everybody.
this
It's
is like
no.
if some kid appeared in FPL tomorrow and he just starts telling like simple and fucking get right, like you must respect me. It's like they don't, mate. You haven't done it. You haven't done it. Maybe here's the thing, and here's the little trick, by the way. Before someone goes, yeah, but I will do it, then just do it. Then don't tell us now. Just do it. Just do it, and you can come back and get your respect, can't you? Because essentially, you have to. This is like a proxy for war, guys. There's a reason why, in theory, it is shameful that like veterans are shunned or treated with no respect or courtesy by people. Like they have earned it, whereas like actually normal plebs, like it's the reason why there's that great line that a lot of people think should be a societal rule. Like you should maybe have to do some sort of, if not military, so some sort of like public service, so you sort of earn your place in society, as it were. Like it's kind of a cool idea because it imprints this idea.
Where is this? Is it from like I can't remember exactly where I read this one, but it's like the person who's putting on his armor should not be speaking as loudly as the person who's taking his off.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Right? Or it's like, before you've gone out and actually done it, you shouldn't really be talking at that level, or maybe you should be kind of like holding back a little bit, maybe taking into, I don't know, maybe I'll be a little bit considerate here. You don't get to talk the same way as somebody who's actually done it. And that's just one of those
I'll
things.
give you a distinction you might like as well. I also feel like an area these people slip up is actually quite understandable and natural, because I've seen it happen a lot of times, which is I think that they actually started as fans and they had social media. And then as they gradually built a career in esports or prominence, they don't sort of tailor down like the fan part and go more into sort of like, right, oh, this is my job now. Like it all counts, like what I'm saying. So I also think the mistake they make is this. It's totally fine for someone as a fan to say things like, I don't think that's real journalism over there. But if you're like an industry figure and you say stupid stuff like that, or you critique like Richard Lewis, then someone really is justified to be like, but who the fuck are you? Because by the way, a fan can have any opinion. The whole point of the fan is to sit in the bleachers and shout whatever you want. But if you're going to be on the field, as it were, treat your fucking fellow competitors respect. Because here's what people don't acknowledge at all, Semmler. I might have like a fight with Sir Scoots over something he said or done, but I'll always give him his respect for what he did in this industry. He's a legend. He built the industry. Like with people like that, it doesn't matter what I think about his personality. He earned that respect, and I would never take it away from him. But sadly, like I say, the current generation, here's the thing, some of them do get it. Like I've told you, there are even a few come from the circle of idiots like Ryan at Push V. Like I think Eminem's comes from his gang. I think maybe even Note does, mate. A bunch of them do. The difference is they just don't have whatever chip on their shoulder. They just seem like they're sort of either happy with what they do, so they're not like trying to be like me or whatever, or they're just cool guys that just don't have this weird fucking edge against people. I don't know why. Who knows?
Just secure in themselves. I mean, the thing is, it just screams insecurity.
It does.
Like this, the reason why this is kicking off.
And by the way, for some reason, I know, look, we all know it's because of the at push V part that I always reference, but this guy, mate, he just has a summer home on your dick. It's fucking mental, mate. Anything you tweet, it becomes a Mad Lib for Ryan at Push V of like, well, in my opinion, you won't believe this guy says 180 degrees from Semmler's on every talk. Like, yeah, update us with your diary, Ryan. What now, as Semmler said, that you must comment on? Like, man alive. You do know, by the way, when I have beefs with people like Carmack, I've had a professional rivalry with him for 20 years. We were actually literally rivals working through the whole industry. You guys act like Semmler's like your fucking Sasuke and you're Naruto. To him, you're a fucking name on the screen, you moron. You know, you've seen him at all those events. You have that parasocial relationship. It's Semmler. I know Semmler. He doesn't know you. You're just a dickhead with a Twitter account. Like, you actually aren't that important, mate. We're only doing this now because it's fucking just hilarious entertainment to warm us up to the show, isn't it?
Basically, yeah, because I mean, we didn't get to do a show last week, so I was looking at the show notes and I was like, holy shit, I even actually like, this is how little it means, but this is why it is petty, because this is how little it means. I had totally forgotten about this, where I tweeted about the Jackie thing, and I was just like, I had totally forgotten about this. And then I'm looking at the show notes from I guess a couple weeks ago. Basically, I would have put this in on Friday the 14th. And so that would have been right after the RMRs. That would have been during the RMRs. But we had just done the show, so I was like, if we do a show next week, I'll put these in the notes, right? But this is also like coming into that respect angle. Holy shit, man! The way that they're dressing now on the fucking RMR was just I mean, I know this is a bone that I like to pick and that I usually bring up, and it is just one of those things. But there are, I was like, okay, I'm not going to talk about it, but then. Dude, this guy shows up on stream, Jackie, and nothing. And to preface this, nothing. I have no problem with his commentary. I have no problem with his professional output, i.e., as a commentator, as a host. I think he does a good job from what I've heard. Not too shabby. All right, yeah, no problem there. The issue that I have, and again, this comes down to the respect. This comes down to the image. This comes down to how you present yourself. The dude is working on basically the last CSGO major, the most prestigious event that's going to happen this year. He's got his fucking shirt buttoned down to here. He's got the pube chest hairs. He's got some fucking chain necklace on. I was like, dude.
He could have been in Fear and Loathing in
shirt.
Las Vegas, right? He could have just been a character in that movie, basically.
It was just,
You know what I mean?
yeah, no, exactly. He was in the trunk. Exactly. With Hunter S. Thompson, like fucking.
He was counting all the Percocets or whatever it was back
Yeah.
then.
You know, when they're trying to swat the fucking bats out of the sky, like that's what's going on. I was just completely taken aback when I opened the stream and I see this guy on the stream. I was like, what am I am I watching the RMR for the major that's going to be taking place in Paris, the last CSGO major? This is supposed to be the most prestigious event of the year. And I'm looking at some guy in a fucking Hawaiian shirt who can't even be bothered to button it up. So I do a tweet where, you know, I'm like, all right, whatever, let it slide. But this time I was like, okay, fuck you. Button up your shirt. You look like you just walked in off the streets off of San Francisco, for fuck's sake. This is a major. Show some respect to the players and the fans. Again, show some respect for the players. For some of these players, this is make or break for their careers. They've put everything on the line to be here. They've put it all. These are supposed to be the peak of the competition of the thing that you're talking about. And you can't even be asked to button up your shirt. You hobo. Unreal. At least wear a jacket. You know, you can do just a button-up shirt, maybe the second button. You know who does it well? You know who looks fucking tasteful on the stream, who looks perfect? Blay. I saw Blay the other day, dude. Fucking looks straight fire. Nice coat, button-down shirt, little pocket square. He had an extra unbutton done. But it's all right. It looked good. It looked tasteful because the whole thing came together. He looked sharp as fuck. This, that I'm forcing myself to have to look at it again. Holy shit. You look like a train wreck. You shouldn't be on the stream. Okay, so there's that in terms of him. But also, the follow-up on that is, where is the producer? Blast, what the hell are you doing? Are your producers so fucking weak that they can't go and tell a talent to button up their shirt, that there's a certain decorum? There's supposed to be a certain level that we're here at. You know, this is supposed to be the qualifier for the major, the world championship. You know, we're going to have a little bit of a higher level in terms of presentation. You know, this isn't pro league. I get it. Malta, fine. You're on the beach. It's the holiday resort. You're trying to get people out there to be at the resorts and gamble and have a good time and all that sort of thing. So maybe you can cut back and have it be a little bit more low key. Everybody's, dressed a little bit more casually. Fine. If that's the direction you want to go in with that production, fair enough. But this is supposed to be the world championship. So Blast, I'm calling you out too. I'm saying, what in the fuck? What are you doing? Where is your vision? Where's your direction? Is this the standard that we used to work up to? No, we used to work up to a standard of suit and tie and looking sharp as fuck so that when somebody tunes into the stream, they know to take it seriously. Oh, there's somebody with a suit on. Okay. He's putting in the effort to look good for us and for the players and for the tournament, for the sponsors. He's putting in the effort to look good for us. So maybe, I should probably take this a little bit more seriously, shouldn't I? I tune in now. I see some guy in a Hawaiian shirt. Get out of here. It's like, why am I going to take this seriously at all? The sponsors, if I'm a sponsor for this event, I would be livid. Livid. Who the fuck? What am I paying for? Absolutely ridiculous.
I've got some points on this, but here's the thing. First things first, even though I've told this story a million times over all my different forms of content, obviously not everyone's seen everything. Basically, the reason why, if I jump in on this topic, all the idiots, the same kind of cretin, actual knuckle-dragging fool like Moist to Critical, who thinks when he doesn't even know anything about CSGO, like, you have said Thorin is overrated in 2022, but look at this video of you saying he was the best in-game leader, not player, in 2016. I got him. And then all you morons go, he is a famous YouTuber. Ha! That is now funny because you just actually the cretins out of a sketch. So when I do that, right, you're all going to jump on me and go, but Thorin, you famously had a Lakers jersey on DreamHack Winter 2030. Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about context, the thing that makes all the meaning in what happens in our lives and the things we say and do. So here's the context of that. One, that is an event where I could show you the email. I literally emailed DreamHack and said, what is the dress code? Because it was the first ever CSGO major. And if people don't know, by the way, that even means, if you don't know this, there were no majors in CS 1.6 run by Valve. We just called them majors when they were like ESWC as a colloquial term for like, it's kind of like how I call events prestige events now for like Katowice and Cologne, etc. So in CS 1.6, essentially the only major even vaguely Valve approved was actually the first one that like Heaton and Potty won in like 2001. And that's just because they allowed it to be called a Counter-Strike World Championship. So I thought to myself, this is a fucking Valve World Championship. Like it's 2013. Like, I better find out, like, what do they they want on the stream. But here's the key thing. DreamHack, and I'll get to that in a second, DreamHack replied to my email and said something where the gist was like, look, it's still DreamHack. DreamHack has like a chilled out vibe. Basically, wear whatever you would feel comfortable wearing so you just can do your job well. So I was like, oh, okay. And if you notice, by the way, go back and look at the event. Everyone's, except for BSL, who did dress up, everyone's dressing pretty chilled back then because, and there's the second detail, it was DreamHack. Now, DreamHack's entire vibe, guys, at this time, this is before DreamHack was bought by the MTG people who own ESL. DreamHack's whole vibe was it was the world's biggest LAN party. People sleep at their PCs. People are eating kebabs all day long. It's about being a sloppy gamer. And if the whole vibe was sort of too good / banter. It was all that shit. That's why if you don't know, guys, DreamHack used to contrast so well against ESL. So first of all, this is DreamHack's request that I dress essentially non-professionally. Secondly, also their whole company culture is we're not the guys in suits. We're the original gamers and the OGs, and we're not about that corporate culture. Then I'll throw in 2 other details. That tournament and Counter-Strike was incredibly small at the time. If people don't know, you used to get 100K for winning the major, and the entire major's prize purse was 250K. And that major, the entire thing from beginning to end lasted 3 days. It was essentially a DreamHack winter. It was just a weekend LAN. So it wasn't at all like we've got now. And also, then I'll just throw this in there. Back then, you got paid for the 3 days, the kind of money you get paid per day now. So there also wasn't this amount of money where we were all buying suits and all fancy things.
Dude, that's
so
the important bit as well.
The world was
we were all
different
living
back
off
then.
fucking ramen back then. We had
So the key thing to me is that was a different world back then. And also, notice this, Semmler. Notice when I did other events that weren't DreamHack, how was I dressed? Because here's the thing, I was always in a suit. I was always looking good. And there's what I actually have to add in as well. I used to be like all these guys because I hadn't been on broadcast before or I'd just been a commentator. And I'll be honest with you, Semmler, I didn't have a lot of money and I wasn't a person who knew about fashion. And I was a gamer and a loser and an outsider and felt alienated from culture and mainstream. I used to think the whole thing, fuck it. That's like some corporate shit, man. Don't sell out to the man. We've got to like be true to ourselves. No, what I actually learned was those were insecurity speaking, mate. That was corp. And so what I had to realize was when I actually did have money and I started to learn what clothes fit me and how to look smart and presentable, I just realized, wait a minute, dude, this is obviously what you should do. Because when you do this, you actually message through your actions that you, like you say, that you're a serious person, you're a professional, you've made effort, you're actually trying to show someone, I'm trying to bring you the highest quality product right now, and I'm trying to show you the game in a way where, it's even better. It's not just our people will get it. The people from the mainstream will see it and go, whoa, this isn't just games anymore. Wow, this is like a professional production. Like, this is almost like TV, like inside the NBA or something. That's exactly what you want. So to me, I find the whole mad thing like this, by the way, because we'll get in a second, obviously, to some of the outrage whenever you have an opinion like this, Semmler. I'll tell you something else as a quick side point I'm really bored of in society. This notion that everything is permitted. You can dress how you want. You can call yourself what you want. You can claim to be what you want. But I'll tell you what you can't do, Semmler. You and me can't have an opinion on it. That's the sin. They can they can dress however they want on the broadcast, but we can't say what we like about it on Twitter. Shut the fuck up. Like, it's either everything's permitted, in which case, buckle up, because I've got a lot of opinions. Oh, we're doing it all mega professional, in which case, shut the fuck up, complaining. Semmler's totally justified to say that this is kind of a bit slapdash, especially, like you say, for the last ever CSGO major. Like,
I think that's where it hurts.
And notice Semmler didn't even say you have to dress in a suit. He said at least fucking button up your, like, Hawaiian shirt you wear. Like, don't have you, like, basically, don't think you're like Tom Jones from the 70s, well, fucking chest hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what
am I having to look at these fucking puny chest hairs for? Honestly, I was like, what is this?
That is a bit wild. Yeah.
It was totally fucking disappointing. It was so disappointing to the point where I actually, because knowing all of that, knowing that there will be nothing good that comes of it, that I'm only going to catch flack from the community, and that, there's going to be like, oh, look at this boomer over here fucking trying to take things seriously.
Right? Do the same thing,
upside on tweeting something like that.
No, there isn't. I want to ask you this, though. Do a similar thing to what I just did, because if people don't know, Semmler came from the same journey I just went through, I described there. Semmler, when he was on the Good Studio, of course he'd be in like a hoodie or fucking jeans or something. So how did you come to the epiphany also? Because if people know, obviously in your prime, you were very slick. How did you come to the decision to change your like appearance on broadcast?
No, it's just, it is that exact thing where the only, and dude, okay, even for LANs and all of that, I had, the cheap, that like I had a button down shirt, but it wasn't like a dress shirt, but it was still at least buttoned down. I had a nice pair of jeans on. I at least tried to look presentable, tried to look nice, but no joke, man. We were living off of ramen and protein powder back then. We had nothing, 2 kopecks to rub together. It's not the same thing at all. all.
Oh, people don't know. People get over €1,000 fucking euros a day, guys. They have plenty of money to go and buy a nice,
Yes, they do,
cheap
exactly.
suit. They definitely do easily.
There is a no. That's the thing. And as soon as I started to make a little bit of money, as soon as I started to get a little bit of money, first thing I did was go out to Jay Lindbergh and buy 2 suits off the rack and a few shirts, and that was it. I was like, okay, now I have some money. We have to step up. We have to get a couple of suits on. We have to get a couple of shirts, a couple of ties. And at least, it's not going to be, some like custom made suit or whatever down the line that I would get done. But at the very beginning, it was like, okay, at least I can look presentable now. At least because you're just conditioned to think that way, but you are conditioned to think that way. You're going to tune into a major event. What do you condition to think when you tune into something that is important with gravitas, with meaning that matters, right? And if we are, so serious about what it is that we're talking about here, we're willing to spend thousands of hours playing a game and talking about a game and watching a game and all that, that's pretty serious. In that sort of scenario, you want to dress to the occasion. And so what is dressing to the occasion? You're not going to go to your friend's wedding in a fucking t-shirt and flip-flops. No, you're going to dress up in a suit. Well, you should be doing the same thing when you're trying to show up in public on a professional broadcast where you are at the highest level of the broadcast as well. It's not like we're talking about some tier 2 fucking shit or event online, guys. At that point, it's like, okay, whatever, wear a button down or wear something, but like, okay, do what you can because it's an online thing and you probably don't have the means. But when you are getting paid top rate in a tier 1 event, and in this case, the tier 1 event, at that point, man, you have to at least make a little bit of an effort. Even Sponge and Machine will make an effort every now and again, maybe not as early as I would like, but if they're casting a semis or a finals, they're still putting on a suit and tie. So, I mean, come on. You can make the effort. It's just the transition for me was just the natural thing. It was like, okay, now, if you're going to dress well, that takes money. As soon as we had the money, that money went into it. And now I have a wardrobe that's worth thousands and, there you go. And I'll get to use a lot of that for the rest of my life. So I don't have to worry about it for a while. Right. But like at the very beginning, it was the first thing is you are conditioned to think, okay, suit and tie, take this seriously, make the effort to look good on stream, because this is something that that's not just about you. If you're trying, our perspective back then, dude, was also, it's not the way that it's established today, where you already have all of the attention. Everybody knows, investors, sponsors, they all know what esports is now. They all want to put their money in it, or at least they did. It's like there was that peak where it's like, holy shit, everybody wants to take part and they all kind of have an idea of what to expect. Back then, there was none of that. It was
this was like pre-VC, if people don't know. It was just all endemic sponsors back then.
There was nothing. So everybody is just like, okay, we have to put our best foot forward because now we're getting more viewers in. The major totally blew our minds. 2013 completely blew our minds because guys, back then we were streaming mainstream tier 1 to like 10,000 viewers at most. If Anders and I had 6,000 viewers, 7,000 viewers average on a stream, we were stoked. We were like, holy shit, we're crushing it. This is awesome. We got 6,000 viewers. It's just if you weren't there, you have no idea, like the perspective, you don't have the context of what it was then to what it is now.
Yes.
So when you started out there and you had 6,000-7,000 viewers, 10,000 viewers, and then maybe you would have a little bit more on a truly big night. When the major rolled around and we had like what did we get, like 100,000 or something? We had like just a number that completely blew our minds. And I think that was also the step where we were just like, oh, okay, we actually have to start taking this seriously now, because we filled the whole auditorium for the finals. First time that we'd seen that for CSGO as well. That had never happened before. So now all of a sudden you have people streaming out the door at DreamHack waiting to get in to watch the CSGO finals between Nip and Fnatic. That was already mind-blowing. Like, holy shit, all these people want to watch live? What is this? And then we're crushing it in a way that we'd never seen before in terms of viewership. So to put things in context, back then that was that eye-opening experience, like, okay, now we really have to take this seriously. And what can we do to take it seriously, right? We need to look presentable. We need to make sure we can look sharp. And then it's about getting out there and showing, okay, to sponsors, because now you want to get sponsors. You have the viewership now. So now you can go to the sponsors and be like, hey, you really want to get in on this esports thing, this CSGO thing. It's the hot shit right now. And look, it's just growing and it's the perfect age demographic for you. It's the 18 young males. They got disposable income. That's the gold mine for any sponsor. So you want to try and put your best foot forward and say, look, you can trust us. You can trust us with your money. You invest in us, right? So that meant, what do? If a sponsor you don't know who is watching and when. So you always need to look good on stream, because it may very well be that the first time this multi-gajillionaire is going to be turning the stream on to see like, this esports thing, maybe I should take a look at this. Should I put my money into it? Right? If he happens to open that stream and you're the first thing he sees, what do you want his impression to be? So
Yes.
that was the mentality back then. Before we had all this VC money, before the entire industry was flooded the way it is, and you have millions and gajillions of dollars that are just all over the place.
Oh,
you know,
by the way,
totally different context today. But back then, that was the mentality, and that's why it was suit up and look as good as you can and assume that anybody could be watching at any time, and that could make or break your career, make or break the scene. So always put your best foot forward. That was the mentality.
also, if people don't know, the same thing happened at that event. Joe Miller and D-Man, who worked for ESL at the time as top commentators in the world of esports, called me out and were basically like, does the producer know that Thorin's wearing like a sports jersey?
Yeah,
now,
that's
here's
right.
the thing. Now, here's the thing. They didn't know the inside baseball that DreamHack had told me I could wear that outfit. So that's where they were wrong. But by the way, I actually agree with their sentiment. Same concept. If they're sitting down, remember, Joe Miller's already done loads of CS 1.6 events at this point. If Joe Miller sits down after being like a top professional in Counter-Strike and goes, oh, the first ever major, aka Valve approved World Championship, let me see what this is like, tunes in and then sees someone in a Lakers jersey, I get why he would be like, wait a minute, this is very professional, like level up. So I even agree with him on that one. Also, Semmler, to be fair, like I've said, I even learned from myself. The first thought I had when the event ended, Semmler, DreamHack Winter 2013 is, you know what, I'm going to put in a lot of effort to really change my image for the next major, which was EMS 1 kind of 8 so... You know,
Well, we all know how
careful
that
what you
went.
wish for. Careful what you wish for. Because I definitely did change my image, but you know, not always the way you intended.
Exactly. You don't know how you don't know how that's gonna go, dude.
Exactly.
I mean,
And also, I will always just say, I'll always add this in because this context is the worst one. You know, there's some like butterfly effect shot on that as well, which is I'll tell you how I phrase it to make it funny, Semmler. Technically, this is true. Technically, I wasn't originally hired for that event, EMS on Katowice. It was actually supposed to be Anders that worked that event, but Anders had a dispute with, I think, Red Eye or something about how much the rate was going to be for the event. Because this is back when Anders was already trying to ask for loads. Even though, if you know how ESL worked, especially back then, they just told you the number at that point. You said yes or no, they're going to someone else. So basically, because he had a dispute with Anders didn't do the event and he hired me last minute instead. So basically, essentially, if Anders hadn't been so greedy, then none of this would have happened to me. So in the end, do I really need to learn a lesson, or is it all just Anders' fault? That's all I'm saying. Just put it out there in the world, you know.
The way that the architect works is beyond us.
Exactly,
He knew
yeah.
ahead of time because
Exactly.
the architect is at all places at once. He wrote the code after all. So who are we to question?
It's like he knew I needed
mind
that
Andrew?
push to change my whole sort of like dynamic in the industry.
Exactly,
I
that's
just needed
why.
that little, basically, instead of Anders being like Morpheus, like you have to do the job, he just pushed me. He just ran up and pushed me back. Oh, what the fuck? No one makes the first jump, Thorin. I definitely didn't. I'll give you that one. You know what? I made a lot of jumps afterwards that were pretty impressive. I didn't make that first one though, did I? I failed the training program like everyone said.
Ridiculous.
Dude, you don't know what it was like waking up on that day, just be like, oh, because remember, this is also back, by the way, when you have like 1,000 Twitter followers, you just wake up like, and then the mentions bar just like, and half of it's in Polish, obviously. Like, oh well, interesting day. So. Whatever. It's all good. It's all good. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'll tell you, I'll bring it back to the topic. Like I said earlier, here's the other reason, by the way, Semmler, why it's like, pick a fucking lane, you cretins. If the same people, Semmler, are going to be like, why are you taking it such a big deal? It's only a fucking video game. Then why are you taking my tweet as such a big deal? Why can't you just take it as just a tweet? Say, fucking what's good for the goose is good for the gander, you morons. Either you like, how can you get mad at Semmler having justified outrage and then you're outraged at his outrage? Like, what does that mean?
Well, because I'm
how does this
persona non
math
grata,
work?
of course.
Yeah, that is sort of true. Basically, that's the other thing I get annoyed about with this topic is people might know good old Ryan Push V had to fucking stick his neck out. And one of the things I'm so bored with is, like I say, I'm so bored with this idea that like their opinion is just whatever the opposite of yours is.
Hold on.
You're just defined by you. What? They can never agree with you on anything ever.
We're going to get in on this real quick, but I just wanted to mention as well, and I have it titled here, "The Gutless Rat Doubles Down Without Tagging Me." So once again, Jackie, if you're listening to this, good commentary, keep it up. But if you're going to fire back, at least tag the guy you're firing back at, or do it in a reply if you've got some stones, because you just doing, your little some button popping games going today. It's just some weak shit, dude. It's just so fucking weak. And so if this is the quality of guys that are coming,
I mean, he's got
up
like,
now,
I assume it's his girlfriend is the one that's the top comment all day. Yes, Queen Slade. She's on like that shit
as well. Yeah,
I assume it's his
what else
girlfriend. It has
is
to
he
be, doesn't it? Come on, or a
It's
fan.
it's just tragic. It's just tragic. Well, if this is the quality, whatever, then not really interested. It's just a shame. It's just like at least tag the person. So don't be a little bitch. Ryan saying that he doesn't want to talk about it, then talking about it was the next one, where again, our best buddy Ryan gets involved, where he's not getting into Jackie outfit thing because it's boring. So it was.
Meanwhile, endlessly going on. I'm from North
tweet,
America, and I'm a fan of Cloud9. Nothing boring about that. Fuck it, I'll just mention that another 8 million times, shall I? I'll act like I literally just one day was like sat in bed next to Jack Etienne and just went, "Have you ever thought of starting a team called Cloud9?" He acts like he is Cloud9. Like he acts like he owns Cloud9. Like he's Jerry Jones of the Cowboys. Like, mate, you were born on the crust of the earth called USA, and so was Cloud9. That's the only connection you have to them, homie. So anyway,
it's just it's boring. But saw a tweet saying this isn't suitable for the children watching regarding his lack of buttoned up shirt, and it's not exactly clear to me if they know that they're watching a game where they kill people. It is
that is such a disingenuous point. It's mental, mate. Because here's what's mad. Do you know what the number one thing disingenuous twats say to me about every single one of my sponsors? Like, oh, so you're trying to sell that to kids? And it's exactly his crowd that's the ones who do it, by the way. That's always the angle, remember? You're trying to sell skins to kids. Like, which is it? Is it a game for kids or is it a game for adults? You decide, guys. But can we just pick and then continue on? Also, mate, isn't that just taking the weakest argument and then just attacking it? Like, so instead of addressing your actual point, like, what level of standard of professionalism should we expect? No, let's just take one person in the internet going, what about children? And just attack that. Like, okay, is that a real sentiment? Does anyone care about that? Might be a take. I never saw it. Fair enough.
It's just because he doesn't have a leg to stand on when it comes to actually addressing the point that I'm making. And so you have to go off on your little tangent and still get in on it. So that's the thing. You just couldn't help yourself, right? Just couldn't help yourself. You had to react to it, even if it's so boring. You just had to react to it. I guess this is going to be
what's weird is when it's on something else, this guy's totally fine with one little prick being all it takes for the right cause.
There you go. Exactly.
Weird how it works. Just in this one, weird.
There's somebody else in here who's tweeting. I honestly thought that comment was satire at first. Then I looked at their tweet history, and I was disappointed that I ever thought it was. I mean, you could just write his tweet history. I mean, I guess this is just going to be the future of communication where we have to.
They're just trying to subtweet you out. They're trying to keep it vague who they're talking about. Are they?
Gotta do that. Can't. Don't worry.
By the way, I'll just give fans out there a quick primer. You know that take you do where you're just literally someone we didn't know existed 0.1 seconds before you tweeted, but because you've had years of a parasocial relationship with us through a screen, you come along and go, wow, I'm so disappointed at who you've become. We don't give a fuck. You literally didn't exist 1 second ago. Like, we don't care what you think about our lives and opinions. And by the way, if somehow what we tweet about changes how you enjoy our work, I think there might be something wrong with your brain, mate. So I'll just be disappointed at yourself. Like, no one, again, I'll rewind it to the thing at the beginning. There's a whole topic I'm probably going to do a video on my side channel, Semmler, which is I actually feel like what goes wrong with plebs is they don't understand that behavior that for a pleb shows you're a pleb. Sometimes the same behavior for someone who's higher up in society is actually legitimate in a way it isn't for them. So, for example, Semmler, here's an example I'll give you. If someone who's a pleb tries to name drop everyone vaguely famous they've ever met, it's going to be really obvious they're just desperate for attention, right? But if you were incredibly famous, it would be impossible not to name drop because you really do know those people. You're not pretending to. Those are the people in your life. You know this famous person, you work with that person. The point is you've earned your status again, like we said at the beginning. The reason why you could comment this way is you are a person of interest. You've done things. They're scenarios like I've lost all respect, but who were you? There was no reason why your respect mattered. Like the currency of your respect actually hasn't yet like manifested, has it? It's just something in the ether right now, guys.
Well,
it just doesn't hit me when you say that.
To earn the respect. And
then exactly. By the way, if the same logic, if someone in the industry who's a veteran said that to me, I've lost respect, then I would care. Like, oh, okay, what the fuck? Why? Like, what happened? If it's just a random, no one, it doesn't matter, guys. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. It won't hit. It doesn't even touch the sides. No one gives a shit. Should we talk about some esports?
We should, yeah. Well, I mean, this is still esports because I guess we are just watching. I guess not like there is that tipping point now, and I honestly wonder: is it because do people feel like it's not going to get any bigger than this, or why is it that now it feels like it's not being taken as seriously as it once was?
You think like esports jumped the shark or something?
Or that's what I'm wondering, right? Because we're not working E-League. Like E-League went down. Like you're down to one tournament circuit essentially, which is ESL, and then Blast is just ESL 2.0 at this point. So I mean, like you're down. Like that there isn't that rapid growth the way that we had. Because remember when again, like we're gonna keep coming back to this, right? Where it's like 2013, and it was like somebody, it was like a rocket igniting. It was just you're kind of there, you're waiting, you're gonna see if something's happening, and then all of a sudden, that 2013 major kicks in and it's a rocket ignition and it's just flying, nonstop growth, viewership growing, player base growing, everything growing, like monsters, sponsors, the money that you're making, everything is just, full ascend. And so, if you were on there at that point, it was an exhilarating time to be alive and working in CSGO esports because holy shit, man, it felt like the sky was the limit. And then we do get that where it's just like, oh, now we're going to work with E-League, we're going to work with Turn, we're going to do this, that, and other. And it feels like there aren't really that many opportunities in that same sense anymore. Now it feels like we've kind of plateaued.
That's
now
true.
we're in the stratosphere somewhere. And I'm wondering if, because it's just like, oh, it's just ESL now, right? There's nobody else. It's just ESL. And ESL were around since the beginning. And ESL are basically the cockroach of esports. Even with a nuke dropping on them, they probably would still survive. So, I mean, that's all there is now. So it makes me wonder if the scene now, because these young guys, who are they taking their guidance from? Who are they emulating? They're emulating the veterans in the space.
I've just realized
the veterans in the space are phoning it in. Well, then why are they going to take it seriously? If the veterans in the space aren't showing them something to strive for, and like if they're not setting the standard, or if they are setting the standard and the standard happens to be down here, well, then they're just going to go for that standard. So is it because the old hands in the scene right now are just tired, or is there not something more to strive for, and so they don't feel like they need to put that effort in, and now they can kind of just plateau and everything's just going to plateau and we're just going to be mediocre, or what's the deal?
By the way, that even reminds me of a point I didn't make earlier about the whole dress code thing. Even though obviously this was the Blast Major and the Blast RMRs, to be fair, as you said, like Pro League, for example, and a bunch of events, even some of their fucking stadium events, Chad and them in the group stage just wear the Bermuda shirt too. The reason why that is egregious is this, Semmler. I just only made the connection myself. Dude, that is ESL. ESL is the one that always was buttoned up. And you know who does the hiring for ESL guys? Literally the same Joe Miller who called me out in 2013. Well, guess what, Joe? Just fucking clean your own house or me. Look at the fucking beam in your eye before you tell me about man. Like, fucking hell. Like, mate, you can just you can fix this tomorrow. Not in the case of the Blast one, but you can tell. Here's the other reason, by the way, guys, I'm sorry, it is mad that people like Chad and Machine push it, I think, too far. Here's the thing. I don't mind them doing, on small events do it, or on day one maybe, or whatever. But
phase or whatever.
My problem I have as well is, mate, you get paid a king's ransom for this job too. You know what I mean? It's not an unreasonable demand to just look good as well as be good at your job, Is it?
Well, their argument is oh, but I do look good. And it's like whatever Zoomer fashion, just hobo fashion that it is now, where it's like, it's cool to look like you're not making an effort. I guess that's the cool thing now, is to look like you aren't actually, making an effort. This is the new counterculture, right? But I mean, easy to say that I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the direction this is going.
Also, let's be real. If you're going to lean into fashion, Semmler, by definition, built into the DNA of fashion is that people can disagree and think it looks bad. That is a core component. Fashion is about how it appeals to style. So if you're going to do that angle as well, you can't be because there's the other thing they love to do, Semmler, and they definitely, the people we're talking about lead into this. They also love to do the thing, because sadly you won't know this because you don't want League of Legends. The worst example ever of this, Semmler, is a guy who works on the LEC in League of Legends. His name is Ender, and he's from America, right? Every single broadcast of LEC, Semmler, he tries to dress in the craziest outfits possible. He will dress like he is Madonna in the 80s or something, mate. He'll have big shoulder pads, and then the next episode he'll have almost half his tit showing, and then he'll have another one and what he does is this, Semmler, he dresses that way, but then goes on camera as if there's nothing unusual and just does a straight up whole gig blah, blah, blah. And then if anyone comments, they sort of do that thing of oh wow, so everyone has to just go on and on about what I'm wearing. It's bro, you obviously wore that to get the response. You are clearly gaslighting everyone that this is normal what you're dressed as, but it's actually very unusual. And you also, this is why I hate about it, Semmler. I actually like the guy as a worker as well. He's a good analyst. But what sucks is this, Semmler. If you did it once in a while, obviously you and Monty have famously sometimes had some unusual suits if it was a final as a way to make it special, right? If you do that once in a while, that's fine. But when you do it every week like this guy does, you're also trying to make it the show always has to be about you to begin with. Someone has to comment on your outfit or make a joke about it. You you almost just it becomes a form of narcissism, guys. Like at the end of the day, we're here to make the show awesome, not ourselves. You know, that's always been the way it was for me.
Even Monty, it was always within the boundaries.
Oh, he never went too crazy. No,
you know what I mean? Like he would have, like I remember he had one of those ties or something. It was like a bow tie, but it was flat or something. I mean, but it's still a bow tie. It's still in the realm of like what it is that we're talking about. It's just a different take on it. And like I would have ties that I would only wear on finals day, for example. Like I'd have specific, you know, bit more flash, bit more something. But I would have stuff that I would try and reserve for the big day. But it doesn't mean that I would drop off a cliff in terms of the other days. I would still be at a certain level up here, a certain standard. And so, I mean, what this boils down to, I guess, is just like it does kind of, you know, you talk about it and you work your way through it by talking about it, but it does actually kind of wrap back around now to the general malaise, I guess, or maybe what is it, entropy, or is it just what's the word that I'm blanking on right now to describe this? It feels like
societal decay. Collapse.
Or it's not to say it's like, what are you phoning it in? Is it not, are we just going through the motions, you know? And so because we're just going through the motions, we don't need to go that extra mile. I mean, it could also be.
Let me ask you as a tangent. I've got a sidebar for you on that one. Because there's another thing. I will do a quick sidebar here because it might be interesting to people. Because it's a bit of inside baseball about how esports works for broadcast talent. Dude, one thing I have to say, even though some of these people, you know them, are literally friends of mine in the industry. I really care about these people. I actually was very disappointed myself, Semmler, in some of the events I would work where some of the people who were some of the best broadcast talent ever in CSGO would just basically tell me straight up like, yeah, I'm a bit bored with it now. Or they never, here's the thing, they never phrased it that way. They made it sound external, like, oh, CS is just a bit boring now, isn't it? Like, it's the same teams playing all the time, and you know, haven't we sort of done these events? And I always used to think like, no, I don't get it, mate. Here's the thing: whenever I work an event, I'm always interested. That's why I'm there. Like if I watch a big game, of course I'm hyped for it. Like I'll never get bored of watching like one of those finals like we did there. It was like Vitality versus Heroic. Like that's always hype for me. If you're bored in that scenario, look, I get it. That's a great job and you earn lots of money. But for real, I actually think genuinely, let someone else do it, mate. Let someone who's really passionate about it do it. Someone who cares. Don't ever phone it in. I think it's criminal. I think the number one cardinal sin if you're on broadcast is to ever phone it in. Because if you do that, you disrespect like not only your craft, but the actual broadcast. Like, don't ever think like you're saying like, oh, it's just not as cool anymore. It's like, well, then let someone else do it, mate. Because this is supposed to be a dream job, you know.
And that is where, because we don't have that rapid growth anymore. I mean, sure, CSGO is setting player records, but in terms of viewership, you pretty much have plateaued. We're pretty much where we are, and we've been where we are for a while now. As far as I know,
I don't think we've ever come close to breaking that Stockholm record for like the viewership. I think they're never got that close, I don't think, mate.
But also maybe like the thing is also maybe in terms of their pay right now, you know, it's like they're probably not been able to, like, that could be true. Especially when you only have 2 tournament organizers and pretty much they're the same. They might as well be the same in all respects because they're sharing the same talent. So now it's clear you can't even leverage exclusivity. You can't even say like, oh, I'll focus on you instead of them or whatever, because they're all interchanging talents anyways anymore. So the talent,
you know, there's a detail there, Semmler. There's a detail a lot of fans won't know because it's very counterintuitive, but I've often explained it. The reason why what you're saying is very apt, actually, maybe more than you realize, is because if you remember, if you worked on the open circuit and you did some ESL events and then some like Star Ladder and Epicenter, what people don't know is it would be the other events that paid the most money because they aren't ESL and they don't have the leverage of like you need to do the event. So actually, if people don't know, oftentimes the big talents in the world were taking like €200 discount for ESL, but then they were getting it by working a CS Summit or an Epicenter or a Star Ladder. That's where you would go and get your top day rate. So actually, you're right. I imagine those events not existing actually probably has massively slashed how much people make and what even their career opportunities are.
Well, especially because then you can put downward pressure for ESL and don't think for a second that ESL aren't thinking in this way, because if they know that they're the only show in town, the only way Anders and I were able to drive up salaries, the only way we were able to get day rates up to where they are today, if they still are where I left them, you know, since I was casting, but if the only way we got there is through competition, is because we have the Star Ladders, the Dream Hacks, the Facets, because then, like you say, you can say, oh, well, they're gonna pay me for this. They're gonna like, this is the rate that they're offering. Can you match that? Can you do better? And through that, you drive up the rate until you hit, you know, until you start to get to the point where it's like, okay, it feels like this is the high water mark, and then you chill out for a bit. But without the competition, the way that this is going to go for all the commentators now, and especially the new commentators, is, well, if ESL are the only show in town, get fucked if you want more money. Where else are you gonna go? So there is going to be a downward, like a real downward pressure now, I think, on all the commentator rates, and that may be affecting their headspace as well, where they're thinking, well, now I'm getting a pay cut, you know, now it's not as prestigious. I don't know what's going on. We're obviously just spitballing here and trying to figure it out live on air. But it seems to me like this could be a factor that's going into it as well, because if the rates are going down, which I think they are, I haven't spoken to anybody about that, but I can only assume because I think that's how, having negotiated with ESL many times, I'm pretty certain that that's how they're going to play this. It could be an interesting place to be in terms of like the headspace of all these guys right now and like where they are and why it is that they're behaving the way that they are. All right, let's actually, speaking of social media, segue, and journalists, Nell actually got jumped on by Apex. I just want to throw this out there because it's just like, it's really rare to see. I mean, it's not that rare to see Simple talking shit about people, but to see Apex come down like
a pretty chill guy usually. He normally gets media. He doesn't put it this way. He never gets triggered at me, so he's the sort of guy who reach out in a DM or just reply in the tweet and sort of win you over. Yeah, I found this a bit weird. It's because here's the thing I heard, Semmler. Obviously, I'm not in the French scene and I don't speak French, right? So I heard it's because people claim that like in the French scene, obviously they're obsessed with Vitality because they're born like French or whatever. He said that I heard basically that they're like they almost like they just live on fucking Vitality's dick, just constantly criticizing them. And obviously it goes without saying Apex is one of the people I think that they're always calling for to be cut or replaced. So it just sounded to me like one of those like if you say Nell's actual tweet that spurred this, it's not even particularly incendiary. I think this was just one of those straw that broke the camel's back moment. It looks like Apex just sort of wigged out because he'd won the game and beaten FaZe or whatever, and just thought, fuck these guys, like this is my moment to pop off, basically. So I can see both sides of this one.
Yeah, and to read out the tweet real quick, and also, whatever we refer in general, there's going to be a link below. So if you want to look at what we're looking at, we're going to have all those kind of links down in the description. But, Vitality are so strong without pressure. And you're right. It really is stuff that we've been saying for a long time where it's just like, it's the reason why I was betting against Vitality all weekend, because I'm like, okay,
I would say most people agree with Nell's sentiment, by the way. It's just obviously it's who he is the problem for Apex. Yeah.
There you go. Essentially Nell's just saying that Vitality are so strong without pressure when they don't really care and have nothing to lose, or when they are underdogs. But when they actually when they are the favorite, the team kind of falls flat. And Apex jumps on him. And I'll have to do like a translation here. You spend your life talking shit about us. You're a big pile of shit. I don't want to read your shit anymore. So shut the fuck up and do your reports. So, that's so out of character for Apex.
By the way, I'll tell you how you know he's triggered there, by the way. The reason you know he's triggered is because he even did the line, which even he would admit if I explained it this way is whack. When you do the line at the end, like, hey, stop having opinions on Twitter and just stick to reporting, man. It's like, well, then by the same logic, stop talking to me and fucking stick to the game, dickhead. You're not number one. Like, that's just a shit. Even Apex would know he's just triggered when he says that. That's just a shit angle in it. Like, he's just throwing that in there because he's throwing the kitchen sink at him at this point to insult him.
He really is, though. Holy shit, dude. I mean, it's just so completely out of left field on.
It's so savage, though, isn't it? He just comes off the top rope out of nowhere, like the fuck.
Comes off the top rope, yeah, dude. And then, I mean, to be fair, I guess he gets redeemed in the end because they obviously won last weekend. So, and this tweet happened prior to the Rio major.
Why didn't he trash talk then as well, Semmler? Like, wait a minute, if you trash talk during the event, if you win the event, at least talk shit then. Like, be like, oh, you like me now? Yeah. So, how do you like me now, Sen? Oh, you like it?
How does my baguette taste?
Exactly. Yes.
There you go. Like, he tweeted that on the 19th, and then goes on to win the Rio event. So I guess Apex, who laughs last best. He's gonna get that nice feeling where it's just like, okay, maybe this will shut them up for a little bit, right? And so this victory must have felt especially sweet for Vitality, just because they are, like you say, I mean, if they're getting hammered relentlessly in their own scene, to get a win is going to feel just like, Christmas, your birthday, everything rolled together. So good on them. It was just fun to mention, just like, holy shit. Okay, Apex. The other one that actually I wanted to get your thoughts on, because I want to get your thoughts on, speaking of the French scene, it feels like it has to be so regular. But once again, there was the Simple versus ZywOo comparison that popped up on Reddit not too long ago, right? Where their stats now are identical in almost every respect, like freakishly identical at this point, in terms of like where they are 700 something maps later. ZywOo and Simple, same performance. The one thing that I wanted to say is that okay, fine, they have the same performance, and again, the French scene are ragging on Vitality because they do tend to drop off when they get deeper into tournaments, and that's why I kept betting on them the deeper they went. I kept betting against them the deeper they went into Rio because I kept expecting them to flop because that's what they do. And so I went ahead and took a quick gander real quick just to see, okay, but what are the results, right? Who's got the more trophies? Who's actually achieved more?
That's going to be easy. It's going to be
and there you go, right? It's just Simple, one major, 17 notable trophies, and this is from HLTV. ZywOo, 0 majors, 8 notable trophies. So he's not even at half of what Simple's got in terms of majors, in terms of trophies, and he doesn't have a major. So it still isn't apples to apples here in terms of comparison. Like, we need ZywOo to be also getting these trophies to start saying like, okay, he is legitimately better than Simple. It's like he needs to start winning some stuff.
This might sound like a subtle point, but the point people always miss is this, Semmler. If you ever look, like I noticed on this particular comparison you gave me here in the document, it's like roughly, it looks like they've tried to make like the same amount of maps played or something roughly, like if you look at the difference. But obviously Simple's part of the reason he has more trophies, he's played many more years than ZywOo. He's probably played like twice as long, right? The other part that people always miss is this, because I've seen ZywOo fans for real, Semmler, take stats that show that over their whole careers, ZywOo is like a tiny bit above Simple. And it's like, Simple's played twice as much. Do you understand that if I'm a tiny bit worse than you and I played twice as much against the best in the world, I'm actually quite a bit better than you? Because there's no guarantee you will do that when you play twice as many maps. And also, the more sample size, the harder it is to get that number. So even though, by the way, this is one of those ones where there's no bad player. Like, obviously, ZywOo was fucking unbelievable. But the point is, if you come at fucking Simple, you can't miss in any category. Like, as you're saying here, Semmler, like, realistically, the only people who can come at Simple is usually people from the resume angle, because, first of all, no one has the stats. Actually, he was the only one with the stats to do it. But it obviously, most people judge everything about a person's career, right? It's a career resume and the play and other factors, how you play the game, what your images and all that shit. But, yeah, so I just thought it's a bit whack, because the problem I have is this. I was there when Simple hadn't won those tournaments, Semmler. You remember once upon a time, Simple was the one in this position. He had the stats that said maybe he's better than Coldzera, but Coldzera had all the majors and all the MVPs and all the trophies. Mm-hmm. Well, the point is, everyone in the scene, it wasn't me. I even used to say back then, like, yeah, but individually, he might be as good. Everyone's like, who cares? Win a major, bitch. Win the tournaments. Well, then why doesn't ZywOo do it? Why does ZywOo get a pass for not winning these trophies, by the way? Because one thing I do want to say when people tell me that, like, obviously, he just won a tournament now. That's great. But before this tournament, it wasn't even in any of the semis or the finals. And everyone's telling me he's the best player of the year. Yeah, because guess what? His stats are easier to get because he doesn't play the winner of the tournament. He doesn't play the team in the semifinals that fucking knocks you out. So I think on that topic, like, I can see both sides. I do think ZywOo is one of the only players who can be compared to Simple. I think he's one of the only ones who's even in the convo, and he can make a case for it. It's just as you say. It's like he's still got some things to do. If he really wants to be Simple, guess what? Simple wasn't Simple after 2 or 3 years. It took him a while to develop this amazing career. And quite frankly, yeah, it is cool if you can win the trophies as well. That's a great way to just round it out, innit? And also, let's be real, whether he wins one or not, I've got to at least see you go deep in a major, mate. I'm just going to say this one more time. Do people know that ZywOo has never played a semi of a major? Like, I'm not hating on the guy, but at least give me one, bro. Remember, in his first year, Simple played in the semi and the final. He was on fucking Team Liquid. There's another thing. Don't talk shit like, yeah, but look at the team. He was playing with Nitro and fucking Adren, and he made the semis the major. Like, that's pretty good, Like, half those players wouldn't even play like 2 years later. So what do you want? Like, so yeah, come on, ZywOo. By the way, perfect timing though. We can segue this because you've just won that tournament and you are on a good team. Let's be real. He's easily a top 2 or 3 team. This is your chance. It's the last major. Let's go out with a bang. And this would even track. Like, he's had a lot of chances, but he hasn't. It would be so cool if the last major, ZywOo has just a mega hard carry performance, win or lose, and goes to the semis. I think that would just be a really cool way to end the game for this great discussion, right?
Well, I mean, we could actually kind of segue this and just give some quick thoughts, because I'm sure you're going to be talking about this with Maui on Snake and Banter and Hot Takes. I'm sure you guys are going to be going into detail on the Rio event, but we could actually just give it some thought on this one, because do you think that they're what they have going for him is a sustainable scenario? Because it seems like ZywOo, he's reliable. He can keep delivering. He doesn't have his overpowering performances in these deeper maps where he's just completely and utterly dominating the way he will earlier on in the group stages or early into the playoffs. But what happened, and what obviously ruined my bets, is that now all of a sudden you had Dupree coming out of nowhere and dropping 39 frags on Vertigo to keep his team in the tournament. You had Spinks putting on a career event. Utterly unreal performance out of Spinks. Nobody saw that coming. I mean, you don't expect that out of even the very best. It's like, okay, if Nico puts that on, like, okay, fine, fair enough. We're talking about Nico. But for Spinks to show up and put on that level of performance, he's right up there with like the likes of Axel and Nico and the best riflers in the world. That was an absolutely bonkers performance from Spinks. So do you think that this is sustainable, or do you think that this was a one-off because it was Rio? It's not as much pressure. It's not that big of a prestigious event. You didn't necessarily have everybody there. Do you think that played into their mental and they were able to overperform because of it, or could we expect to see this kind of performance from them at the major?
The problem is, I actually think the Spinks one. Look, I don't know that he'd have as good as that, because like you say, basically that was like one of the best rifle performances of like the last year or two. Like you say, he's up there with Axel and Nico and the absolute best riflers. I wouldn't expect quite that level, but I do think if you look at this year, Spinks had started to level his game up, unlike some of his problems last year. Also, because Ents, his former team, and Vitality are actually two of the teams where I have a better relationship with the in-game leads. I've been able to talk with them privately about players like Spinks and find out what do they think's going wrong, or what did you do in your team. And the gist I've gotten basically was when Spinks was in Ents, because they sort of knew he's clearly the best player and they built the team around that. What they essentially did was they gave him like almost like the green light as a lurker, where they would almost play as a group away from him and he could just do what he wanted. He could try to choose the timing of when he attacks, when he flanks, when he holds. And if you do that, by the way, a lot of lurkers have done this in history. They'll get their absolute best amount of kills. Happy, Blame F, we all know the famous ones. The problem is, when he came to Vitality, it looks like they wanted him to be more part of like a team unit approach or whatever. And so I think what's happened is they've basically just taken time and they've figured out something akin to what they did in Ents. Like they've sort of integrated Spinks better. So that's a big positive, because if Spinks can play not even to this level, say he plays like 85% of this level, then they're going to be a team that has a chance again. You're going to have two good players. You can win tournaments. The problem is, it's the one you nailed. It's the Dupree one that I don't buy, mate. Not only was that performance, by the way, the only reason they stayed in the tournament, they would have been out in the semis if that match happened that way. But also, I'll throw this in as well. For the whole tournament, his actual rating was ridiculous. I think he ended with like a 1.10 rating or something, mate. That Dupree hasn't been on that level of Vitality the whole time, mate. So that part does not feel sustainable. So that did feel like a one-off, and he just had like a legendary performance in one game and then a slightly elevated level. That's what I'm suspicious about. So essentially, I don't think they can be as good as they were here, but I do still think they're a solid dark horse for the major. Like, I think if I had to rank teams in order, Vitality would be maybe like my fourth team to win the major or something. So they've still got a good chance to do it.
They're still, I mean, right now they're currently ranked 2 on HLTV.
I mean, it's just because they won the tournament. That's just how it works. Remember, the problem in the modern day that people have to remember is, with the old circuit, we had so many events and so many tier 2 events as well that you sort of did an aggregate. Whereas in these ones, if we have a one massive event, whoever wins or comes second is automatically going to be top 3 almost. You know, it's just the way. There's not a big enough sample size nowadays, is there?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it's just going to weight these tournament events. So, I mean, you have Heroic as number 1 right now. Vitality is number 2, Navi is number 3, and G2 4, and Phase 5. I mean, these are...
By the way, doesn't that Heroic one really tell the story of their teammate? They are number 1 because if you aggregate all the tournaments, dude, they're in every final. The problem is they don't fucking win them. That's the bummer. Because, by the way, the worst position you can ever be in any game is you are number 1 ranked, but you don't win. You're just consistently second. Like, that's the nightmare. Everyone knows that's the fucking ultimate nightmare, because you're this close, but you're also that far away, if you know what I mean. It's the worst feeling in the world. And by the way, even though I know social media managers have to do this shit, shout out to the Heroic Twitter guy who did do that tweet of Cadian before the final. Like, we're not losing this one. It's like, well, how's your milk today? I know you have to do it. I know you do. It's whatever. It's not like it's the players tweeting that. Fair enough. It was just social media, but I laughed at least.
You know, I was just livid this whole tournament. Just these results driving me up the wall completely.
I will say I was slightly mean when I did that tweet where I put, because there was a tweet where it was like Cadian like bragging about it was some clip of him on like Gaules' show or something, like begging fans to like support them in the final. And I was like, no wonder they love Heroic in Brazil. They love fucking losers over there. Just some naughty angle like that, you know the classic one, the classic. Oh, then again, Canadian, maybe they have actually accepted you are an honorary Brazilian because you also don't win tournaments in Brazil. Because remember, that's the other stat. By the way, how was that aged, Semmler? Remember when I told everyone last year, Brazilian teams don't magically get a boost and win the event. They've never done anything. Even Furia, like, by the way, they actually, people don't know, they could for real have been fucking deeper at the tournament, but as usual, it's Furia, isn't it? They always let you down. They always let you down somehow, mate.
Oh, so disappointing.
Because they could have beaten Heroic if people don't. That was a great match, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then that was a great match, and I actually had them to beat. Heroic. I had them to beat Cloud9. I thought that they would actually take Cloud9 as well in the upper bracket final, because I mean, again, Cloud9 a little shaky, not quite there, and it turned into a 3-mapper, and Cloud9 got it on Ancient. But so that was painful already. But then that wasn't Furia out. That was just seeding. So fair enough. But then the quarterfinals come along, and I had Fury to upset Heroic. I had him to take it. Shit, I even had Big. I kind of, in hindsight, it's like a little bit of a stretch on that one.
Sure.
But I even had Big taking Vitality.
No, but that was also because, if people don't know, the odds we got for Big were like 3.5 or something. So we all know Big is a good upset team. Yeah, it was worth rolling the dice on that one, mate. That was
16-12, 16-12. I mean, come on, they didn't blow them out. It was a Big put up a fight. But in hindsight, you're just like, yeah, maybe need to rethink that one. Altogether, though, I mean, I guess one of the points that I wanted to kind of look into on this tournament is, again, what was the value of some of these teams attending this tournament? Because they could have actually had time off after the big RMR, the pressure of the RMR and managing to qualify, managing to get through, all of that sort of thing. It's like Twistzz came out with this tweet. And it kind of made me wonder. And again, we're talking about this topic of, are players overworked? Rough loss in individual performance, but I have no shame in saying that I am exhausted. Finally, time to rest. Stressful few weeks, and every person deals with it differently. One too many days on low sleep, no appetite. Now the feeling of winning will be even better after resting. I mean, could he have taken a card out of VP's playbook and just said, yeah, actually, we're just not going to go to Rio? We've already won the Grand Slam. The only reason they probably agreed to go to Rio to begin with is because they were hedging their bets to make sure that they had as many events to win the Grand Slam as possible before Cologne. So, maybe you just kind of like nod out. You take a VP playbook card here and just say, we're going to do some intense training. In a way, Semmler, what you're talking about is true, though. Back in the day, what you would do for real is you never used to turn events down. So what you'd do is you'd use this one as almost like a boot camp. You'd use it like, right, just try a bunch of stuff out, play, like sort of see what our form's at, and then go to the major, basically, right? That's not uncommon. People used to do that back in the day. Now it seems to me like they actually tried. They weren't necessarily trying new stuff. They were actually trying to get stuff going and trying to win. And then that didn't pan out. And so now they just added more stress, added more of a deload period for them going into the major. Whereas now it looks like they're actually going to have a little bit of time off. Thankfully for them, they've got a week and a half before the major kicks off, but then you've still got the major. So you still need to be coming back. So it doesn't mean like, in a week and a half, they'll start playing. It's like, they're probably going to start boot camping next week at this point to start preparing for the major to get a run at it, because everybody is going to be wanting to win this last one. Everybody's going to be looking to get a win here. So I'm hoping that FaZe are going to turn, actually show up and show us what get a deep run out of this event, man, because that's, I really want to see this story come along.
Dude, I'll tell you the one that shocked me. When I watched this event, even though I get it, look, it isn't actually that big an event. It's not like, look, this wasn't a prestige event, even in terms of vibe, guys. No one's going to remember this event forever. But the actual team, I do think, blew it by not attending this event was G2. It's like, dude, you guys were like on top recently. Like, think about how long you've been waiting to win a trophy. Like, you try and stack CSGO is going to be over in the summer. Like, if I were them, mate, I would have just tried to win all the trophies on the way out the door. You know what I mean? Win this one, Dias, the major, just win them all. Like, it seems kind of wild to me they took the week off, as it were. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. Because everyone else was there pretty much. It's basically them and Team Liquid are the ones that didn't turn up, right? Everyone else is there, seemingly.
It's just, it's like teams that shouldn't have been there were there, and then teams that should have been there missed out. It's such a weird event. It's hard to get a grip on it. And then also then you're not really quite sure who's dialed in and who isn't. And so who's actually, feeling the hunger to put it all on the table and who isn't. It also makes you wonder there in terms of the results. So again, it kind of muddies the water a little bit going into the major, because you're not quite sure who's going to be performing at what level. It's a bit of an odd egg. All right. So, I mean, players and their schedules again. The other bit of news that actually came out a couple weeks ago, but I do want to mention it because we are Existence fanboys on this channel. I don't know if you've had. Oh no,
I did see this. I haven't talked about it, but I saw the twitlonger you're referring to, right?
Yeah, the twitlonger from Existence updating us on where he went and what happened to him, because he kind of just dropped off the face of the planet there. And it turns out he's had some kind of nerve issue that has caused him to literally be debilitating pain, and has suffered debilitating pain for years, which is just the most insane thing if you think about it. I mean, This is a physically fit guy as well. He is not the kind of guy you'd be thinking, okay,
Oh, no, he's always in the gym. Yeah.
No, he's a total beast. So for him to have something like that happen to him, really, it's such a freaky situation. And
by the way, As an aside, if people don't know, because remember, people outside the French scene, Semmler, actually won't know what Existence's personality is because he never does English interviews, does he? One of the weird things about him is I was obviously a fan of his because what a brilliant tactician he was and a mind for CS. But one thing I was always very impressed by is, dude, he actually might be one of like the most fucking professional humans I've ever met in esports. He's like a gentleman. He's a mega fucking cool guy in that sense, isn't he? Like he's actually a super pro in that regard. Like, dude, I've never heard him trash talk anyone or be rude. Like he was actually a model professional in many ways.
Oh yeah. And I mean, just friendly as well, man. When I was first coming into the scene and didn't really know what was going on or didn't really know like the older names. Of course, Anders and I were casting everything. So we knew, who they were. We were casting them every day, but then to meet them in person, it's not like we were coming from Source or 1.6 or anything like that. We weren't in the scene at that point. And so he was always a model, just super friendly, always answered my questions, was always like just super friendly and upfront. And like, if I had a question, never hesitated to go up and ask him. Never had a problem with that at all. He was always just just the coolest character. And so, really, really unfortunate to hear that this is what happened to him, and that he's been suffering this kind of debilitating pain for so long. But I mean, there is a light at the end of the tunnel in the sense that it sounds like he's on the up and up, and he's going to be able to get back almost to 100% soon. So happy to hear that. And of course, wish him nothing but the best. I hope that he makes a full recovery and that he can get back to getting involved. Because the thing is, if he is making a full recovery, think of who like you would want.
Imagine this guy being a coach in CS2. Exactly. That would be a dream, wouldn't it?
It'd be a dream, especially in the chaos where you're going to need to have somebody who can take, who can sift and guide your way through the chaos, who can take what is the advantage.
Think about that. This new utility.
It all out
you want someone like that, exactly. They want them to be the ones inventing all the shit, don't you? Yeah, I'm with you.
So I mean, yeah, the timing on this couldn't be better for him in terms of bouncing back and coming back into CS and actually getting picked up by a major team going into CS2 who actually needs a coach. Dude, it'd be awesome to see Existence back in the mix, man. That would be so sick. The fact that he went off to Valorant is like, ugh. It's a shame.
Way, one thing I always used to say on By the Numbers, and it's almost come to play now with some of the teams. Think about like Blade, God-B is around, etc. Like I told Richard my actual dream. It hasn't fully come to fruition yet, though. I always wanted it to be where that's what happened with all the great in-game leaders. Instead of like once they were finished being an in-game leader, they keep battling, but as coaches. Like imagine if right now all the coaches in CS:GO Semmler was like Sean Gares against fucking Dazed, against God-B, against Existence, against MSL. Dude, that would be the shit. Who the fuck? That would be literally like the best era of tactics and fucking Counter-Strike play ever. Like, just get all the really great IGLs and keep them in the game. Like in football, obviously all the fucking players become managers and all that crap, don't they? So I want it to be like you can have a lifetime career, especially if you're the IGL. Like experience and the way your mind for the game works, that doesn't go away just because you can't shoot people in the head anymore.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look at Blade. Look at these veterans of the scene who have made that transition. I mean, you have to think that he's got a way in here if he wants one. It's a question of whether he goes in. But I was about to say it's a question of whether he goes in with the French team or not. And then of course I caught myself and said, "Oh yeah, French team, right." I mean, if anything, he could go work with Falcons if they would have him. I mean, it's
probably that one is.
It's not like he hasn't.
Is NBK going to take orders from Existence? Isn't that sort of what his whole identity is based on not doing anymore? Because sadly, you know what? I've got to go back one day. Someone, this has reminded me. I'll do this article I intended to do years ago and I told you about, but I never actually did it as an article. I once meant to do an article which would have explained why the French scene fractured in the way it did. Because essentially what they did was Existence was sort of like the spiritual father of the French CSGO scene with all his tactics and style. And essentially all of his sons like rebelled against him. Sharks rebelled against him. NBK rebelled against. Like eventually they all turned on him in a way. Even Smith fucking left him, mate. Like, oh, technically he kicked Smiths initially, I guess. But like it was actually wild. Like it was one of those ones where like, dude, it was almost like some fucking Succession TV show level drama of like all the fucking stakes behind the scenes and who was allying with who. So if I actually ever write it, it'd be a fucking banger because I'm sure people would be interested to be drawn into that world.
It would be
a bit
like,
hidden from the atmosphere, I think.
The drama. Especially when you like, oh, when this guy went with this guy, and then they made this team over here, and they made this group over here, and I mean, there were so many.
I'll never forget.
That is why the French scene fell apart completely towards the end. There is because they weren't doing anything to bring up new talent. You just had the old talent, but then the old talent backstabbed each other so many times that nobody could trust anybody anymore, and so they couldn't play with one another anymore, and so the whole French scene falls apart.
I remember one time asking you, like, what the fuck is going on? Because one time we were at an event. I'm not going to say what event, so I won't give the era away. But it was one of those ones where, like, I'm almost certain this is where it was like one event after, like, two of them have cut each other from a team or something, right? And then I saw these exact two players, because obviously all the French players used to hang around together and speak French, obviously. I saw these two players at the next event in, like, sort of the lobby where everyone's having drinks, walk up and then do that, like, the joke is because they're all called Richard. I'll just say Richard because it'll be safe on it. Like, Richard. Give them like the kiss and then like, let us get a drink. And they were drinking wine together. And I was like, was that all like fake? Were they not having a beef? And you were like, oh no, they do hate each other, but this is how they are. It's like, this is some fake. It was almost like the fucking Hollywood acting scene or something. All fake as fucking public. Like, oh, I love that dress you're wearing. Like they're just hating each other. It's like fucking piece of shit. Like it was so, what? Because if you don't know, guys, their culture is so different to ours. So different. It's so weird, isn't it?
It is one of those jarring things. And this because half of my family is French, and I used to grow up with my French family, and so I'd spent a lot of time with them. And my dad always said, you know, it hasn't been a good dinner until you've had a good argument.
Right.
And so you're just every time it's just, and then you know they're drinking their coffee after dinner. Everybody's friends again, but you know maybe they're just calling each other names. Maybe shit's you know you think the whole house is gonna burn down, and then 2 minutes later it's like. Whew, back again, having a coffee. And you're just like, oh, I guess this is just the way it is. Culturally, that is just how it works. It is one of those factors over there. All right, what else have we got here? Some of these points are from a couple of weeks ago, but this was one of those points where I just wanted to mention it again.
Yeah, bring it up.
Nemiga Galaxy get invited to a closed qualifier, skipping the open qualifier that they played against teams that went through the open qualifier and got completely annihilated. Like, not even close. And so I just wanted to bring this up because there was so much brouhaha about how, you know, when the awards were happening and all that, oh, these players, you know, they can compete. Oh, they can do it. They can go the distance. Oh, you know, there's hope here. This was for the CCT Central Europe Series 6 qualifier. And for any of you wondering, Nemiga Galaxy is the number one female team, number one ranked female team in the world.
Far and away as well. Like if you look at their Wikipedia, they are like NIP fucking 2012. They win like every tournament, Semmler. It's mental. Like so, if people don't know, we obviously referenced this a couple of episodes ago, where one of the star players, that 23 girl, did that interview where she basically suggested better male teams should practice her team just to help them get better. Now, the reason why that's so significant in this context is because, as Semmler says, this team didn't even qualify to this tournament. In fact, if you look at their results, I suspect they wouldn't have qualified. They were given a leg up just for this PR angle of it's women and they're the best, so let's see if they have a chance. And if you look at who they lost to, guys, not only did they get absolutely brutalized, like barely even in any maps. Here are the three teams in their group that they finished last place. There is a team called Iron Branch, who looks to be a mixture of Belarusian and Ukrainian players. There is that guy, JR, and Lollopop 2K. You might remember those ones back there. But aside from that, I don't know them. And then they're also in a group with Ents Academy, not Ents Academy, who, by the way, appears to be Finnish players. And then
Finnish players, and they are all supposed to be. They're also supposed to be one of the lowest, lowest ranked and like academy teams out there right now.
And then the last team is a team called SK Gaming, not SK Gaming, SK, which is some Polish team that I've also never heard of the players from. So like these aren't even like named people, mate. They're just,
by the way, SK Gaming qualified through the open qualifier. So for some context, SK Gaming went through the closed qualifier or the open qualifier, qualified through the open qualifier. So that's the level of team that they would have had to beat to be able to make it into the group that they're in now.
Oh, by the way, I'll shade in a point though to see what you think of this. Here's what's weird though, Semmler. I would actually be very interested to know if there is any like viewership bump when Nigma Galaxy plays though. Because here's the thing, if there was, then that would be a justified reason to invite them. In the same way, I always use this example. You know, back in the day, teams like Virtus.pro from Poland or Cloud9 from NA, they could be shit, but you still invite them to like Cologne because you know you're going to get some extra fans, don't you? Look, if you get a viewership boost, maybe it makes sense for the tournament. If you don't though, you have no business being invited here. Like the novelty that you women isn't a good enough angle, is it? It's about competition. But like I say, if for some reason it helped the tournament, that would also be a reason I could maybe see why they would do it, you know, because it is only an invite to the qualifier. You haven't won the tournament because you did it, you know.
No, you haven't won the tournament, but it is still the fact, you know, when it's always like, oh, we need more opportunities. You did take someone else's spot though, didn't you?
We
need more opportunities. We need more qualifiers. Like there is an open qualifier. There's almost always an open qualifier. You have every opportunity, if you can make it to these events. And so, of course, I guess why I want to mention this ultimately is just to shut this whole argument up about how oppressed this team is and they need more opportunities. You already have an isolated league in which you get to compete for significant money and which allows you to have a team and sponsors and everything. You already have all that for you, your own safe space. You already have that for you.
Well,
and so then you have
within the last 12 months,
get into these tournaments.
They've won something like fucking like 300K in the last 12 months or something. It's not like they don't get any money. They're killing it in the female scene.
They're killing it.
Yeah.
And actually, now that you mention it, there are no statistics available for the close qualifier. So unfortunately, that really sucks because we can come back to that actually because that would be an interesting tidbit to look into whether or not there is a viewership bump because it would be you would be bringing them in for the novelty of it.
Yeah. Of
saying, okay, let's see how do these players compete? What is the level, right? And so to just give you some context in terms of how they actually competed, they went up against Ens Academy first and got blasted 16-4, 16-3. In which everybody on the Ens Academy team is in the green, and Milsey drops a 1.7 rating across 2 maps. Whereas on Nigma Galaxy, 23 is the highest ranked at -8 with a 0.79 rating. And Anna, who won Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, yes, Player of the Year, according to HLTV, got 0.49 rating, -16, 1531 across 2 maps. So it's just to put things in context for you, just to give you a little bit of a context, just how much of a gap there is, just so you can understand. It's not some hypothetical. It's not like, oh, what if they were to compete? What if they were? No. This is what happens when the very best female team competes against tier 3 CSGO teams. Tier 2. Tier 3, tier 2. We won't do that to Academy. The Ens Academy are supposed to be one of the lower ranked Academy teams, but still, I mean, they're an Academy team. This is how it measures up. And then they go up against Eska, which to my knowledge is almost like they might as well be a pug. They're just doing it for fun. They have a team. They're doing it, but I mean, they don't have that kind of level.
They don't even have a Wikipedia page, guys. Their org does not have a Wikipedia page. In case you need to know how, like, this isn't even, that's not a pro team. Come on.
So these guys are going in, and to their credit, they did get double digits on the first map. So this is an elimination match. They went 16-11 on Nuke, and then 16-6 on Inferno. Their map pick on Inferno. And so, and once again, Anna 0.74 rating. Vilga, to her credit, who is pretty much the most experienced player in the scene right now until I guess Zaz and the others come back. But Vilga 0.99 rating in this match. 3140. Not too shabby. -9. Whereas on the other side of things, it's just the guys are popping off, and 1.42 rating on Meister, who had a ball of a time.
They are having the games of their lives here, the opponents, if you noticed. Listen to the ratings. You said earlier, a guy had a 1.7 rating.
Yeah,
who's this guy? Simple. No, he's just playing against Nigma Galaxy. What do you want?
1.42, and then it drops down to 1.18, 1.14, 1.1. I mean, basically, these guys, these Polish guys are just, they got the job done. They got it done clean. And so the reason why I want to bring this up is, again, for if there is a like you say, a novelty to it that actually draws viewership, okay, you can make an argument there, right? But should a team of this caliber be getting direct invites to the closed qualifier when there's an open qualifier happening, and then get blasted by one of those very open qualifier teams that had to fight their way through that bracket to qualify to get into this group, get utterly destroyed by them? It just goes to show that they shouldn't be getting direct invites to closed qualifier unless there is. Well,
here's the funny thing,
novelty, and given the viewership, because there is viewership numbers, there are viewership numbers available for Impact League, which is the main female league. I don't think that the bump is going to be significant enough to put. To give them this unfair advantage, let's say, to getting into close qualifiers over teams that actually have to qualify.
I actually think the tournament itself is what makes it a bit egregious to give them the invite as well. Because if people don't know, the CCT tournament, the entire premise initially, even though they sort of violated it, Semmler, because I don't know if you know this, but they also did do stupid things, like I think give invites to top like low tier 1 Brazilian teams and stuff to play in, even though it was a European competition. They did do that. They sort of were star fuckers for views. But the initial premise of this league, Semmler, was supposed to be an antidote to things like the Blast and ESL circuit. It was supposed to allow smaller teams, especially from regions, by the way, like Baltic region, to come up and have a chance to compete in a real competition and show that they're good. And as you're saying, in this case, essentially the whole point is it's an open tournament that anyone can play in, and you're giving away spots to teams for just sort of nepotism almost, or some fucked up shit like that. You just like them, so you just gave them a spot. Whereas, as you're saying, like, here's the problem. The fact that SK was one of the teams that qualified implies whoever would have got the spot instead of Nigma would probably have been better in the tournament. So you actually robbed some male team of a spot to play in this tournament, who, by the way, might be people trying to become pros. Like, that's why this whole
those
thing...
pros don't get the nice league to play in where they get a salary and all of that either.
That's the problem, Semmler. People don't know this is by definition like a fucking zero-sum game. If you give something to someone, you took it from someone else. That's the way a league works. Like, if you give the female team something, you stole it from a male team who would have had that spot. That's just currently the status. Now, if they win games, it'll be different, but they don't currently. That's the problem. And also, if people don't know, this is why the most tired, and as soon as someone says it, I know they're disingenuous, Semmler. The implication of, like, they don't have tournaments to play in. They are playing, as far as I know, some of these teams play the fucking RMR qualifiers, guys. They just get knocked out so early you think they didn't play. Because the joke is, they would get, I'm not exaggerating, they would get knocked out where me and Semmler would get knocked out if we made a POG team with like fucking Bardolph and played the same RMR. We'd all go out at like round one, you know, fucking that'd be it. So the real problem with this scenario is, as you said, Semmler, they literally have more opportunities than people who are as good as them but are male. So, like, at this point, I don't know what you want more. Like, eventually, you have to do something yourself. You know, you have to have some responsibility and just improve yourself. Like in this scenario, like you're saying, dude, this isn't even an opportunity. You've just been given a spot. An opportunity is like, can I play in the qualifier? Yes, of course you can. Anyone can sign up. No, but I need an opportunity of just directly skipping to the actual, like, closed qualifier.
Well, that's the thing.
That's not an opportunity. That's just an unfair boost, isn't it? What the fuck?
Exactly. And that is the frustrating thing about this, because I think it does them a disservice, because you can't be giving interviews like that 23 player did, saying that the world is against you, where at exactly the same time, you're getting direct invites over other teams into a closed qualifier like this. It doesn't work both ways. And the only thing that I can think of is that it has to be degrading for you mentally to be, for your integrity to be playing these kinds of double standard games, where on the one side you're claiming victimhood, but on the other side you are clearly favored. And so stop. Either you have to go one way or the other. You have to go full victim, or you have to you have to go what would it be? Full victim? No, just don't even take the loser side of it at all. Just say we're doing the best we can. We're going to make it through the open qualifiers. We're going to earn it. Or you play the full victim card and get all the handouts you possibly can and maximize every chance you got in that fashion and show no shame. It's going to be one or the other. And I think the more heroic, the more beautiful way to go about it, the brave way to go about it would be to say no to the handouts and actually earn it, because then nobody can take it away from you. Again, it's like, man, we're coming full circle all the way back in where to the beginning of the show when we were talking about respect and how respect is not given, it's earned. You know, it's like, I'm not going to give you respect because you tell me to give you respect. I'm not going to give it to you by default. But if you show me that, hey, you actually deserve some respect, well, then it's like, okay, then. So if you show me that you get into this closed qualifier by qualifying through the open qualifier, I've got fuck all to say. I've got nothing to say. In fact, I'm going to say, good job. Let's go. That's awesome, right? Because that's not an easy thing to make it through an open qualifier with how hungry these players are online and how talented they're becoming, as we clearly see with how the talent is rising. It's not an easy thing to do to get through an open qualifier. So if you're doing that, there's no criticism. There's no criticism possible. You shut up all the haters right off the bat. The only way you open the door for the haters is because people are honest. They look at it and they say, this is unfair. This is an unfair situation. And they're going to call you on it. You can't then call that hate. That's open criticism of an unfair situation. So my advice
I know what you do.
To do away with with accepting these invites, or do away completely with any of these handouts, and to just earn it, because then nobody can take it away from you. And you know, I'll be the first in line to cheer you on.
There's no way that's happening. What you just said there is the most naive part. The idea that they would like turn down the handout and then also not complete. They're going to do both of it. That's the scenario. They're going to do it all at once and have their cake and eat it at the same time. No, the problem I have is this. The most dirty part about it, because it actually implies you're not competitive in a game where your job is to be competitive, is when they do that thing that you said there, where it's sort of like, they're just hating us because we're women. No, they're hating you because you're extremely bad in the competition. Like, look, you wouldn't get as much attention if it was men, but you know what? Are you ready? Think this through. The men also wouldn't get invited if they weren't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So Semmler's point is absolutely apt. Like, in this scenario, there's two ways you can go. Here's the problem. We're not saying like you can't ever get an invite. If you actually were really good, then yeah, take the invite. Of course, you deserve to be there.
Well, if you earned it.
But if you know that you're not good enough, and you take the invite and then get trashed, and then people go, wow, they are pretty shit. I wish I'd seen someone else. That seems like a totally legit take. You know what I mean? That seems fair enough from fans, right? They are allowed to think someone who performed badly was bad.
Yes.
Because that's the other thing.
Precisely.
I'd also have to see the comments similar. If someone's just saying, wow, they're shit, there's nothing sexist about that. If they're saying, wow, these women can't play, that's different. Like, they're just, in this case, someone's just saying you're just bad at the game, which they objectively are relative to the top pros. Because as we say, let's just reiterate that detail again. Nobody in that group is anyone you guys would tune in and watch play CS. These aren't top teams. This is how big the gap is. They're getting completely gapped by tier 3. What do you want?
Well, they want us to ignore the evidence that's in front of our eyes. That's that, and it is just getting that is the frustrating thing with this whole situation as well. It's just like, can we have a reasonable discussion on this topic, right? Where we have the evidence now and we can actually have a conversation about this, or do I have to keep playing pretend that there are the penumbras, there's these unseen forces that are holding people down unfairly, and it's like, no, that doesn't work in competition. that's just the brutal honesty, and why competition is a meritocracy is that. In competition, you're either better than your opponent or you're worse than your opponent. And whoever gets the W at the end of the day, there you go. It's pretty clear cut that way. It's why it's so difficult to, wrapping this back into commentary, right? It's why it's so difficult to judge commentators and to how to improve as a commentator, because you don't have those nitty-gritty statistics that you can look into the way a player does, right? It's very clear for a player the path to progression. I need to improve my opening kills. How can I do that? I need to improve, I'll go learn some smokes, I'll learn some flashes, whatever. There's all sorts of things that you can do there. Whereas on the commentary side, it's much more nebulous. When it comes to, competition here, guys, it's very clear. You're either winning or you're losing, and there you go. You can't really get around it. So at the end of the day, that's where we can leave it. I think this is probably a good time to, well, actually, hold on. We have one more thing. I think I'm going to let you do more of the talking on this because I haven't had much time to look into it yet. But Richard released an article on how North America's greatest esports brand became a nightmare. I'll give you 2 chances to guess who it is. Okay, you had your chime. Thorin. Evil geniuses, living evil. Richard has put together a beautiful article on the topic.
Basically, people will know that the saga goes like this. Because EG was obviously quite bad in CSGO for like 3 years now, obviously everyone pointed out over and over and over again, wow, they're not good. We'd all heard the stories. BC and Cirque made loads of money. Then there was that whole thing with Kassad was going to join because they were trying to recruit new people. Not only did he not join, but this all began when they just disrespect that person called GamerDoc, who's the senior director of performance at EG, just openly insulted Kassad and revealed some shit he'd said in an interview. So all of us decided, you know what, fuck this org. So we started looking into it. And then there was a whole thing that happened in League of Legends, where also it turned out last year in League of Legends, like the org had fucked around with how a young player in their team and mistreated him in a way that actually potentially medically damaged him. So basically, everyone was on the trail of EG stuff, but most people probably thought it ends with the League of Legends story of that guy getting wrecked, etc. No, because what essentially what I found when I dug into that story was that was just the worst incident. The real problem in EG is the structure of the people at the top of the org. Amazingly, it's actually a whole bunch of women in this case, because it's a woman called Nicole Point Jameson, and then she herself hired like someone called Jessica something, and then this GamerDoc person's also a woman. So it's also a weird thing, by the way, where they seem to only hire other women and then give all the power to the women. So it's actually also, by the way, when people do that thing like, without men, there'd be no war. Well, here's a bunch of women running an organization which A, is in a game that's a proxy for war, and B, this is business. So now that there's no men, you'll all be doing a great job. Oh, what's that? It's total nepotism and corruption, and you've all shit the bed a million ways. And what this article series points out, Semmler, is I've told you this premise before. When you get to the level me and Richard do, not just the level of your craft, but people know that you tell the truth. People know that you can protect a source. People know that you fight against people that you think are doing unjust things. Dude, people come to you. At that point in time, you aren't the journalist on the beat. You're like searching for a story. What's going on here? It's more like you're like a fucking like Knights Templar character, and someone comes to you like, hey, I'm being assaulted. Like, you have to help me. And then you're like, right, this will not stand. Like, we have to go out there and, deliver justice, the king's justice or whatever. So basically what happened was I got sent, holy fuck, like the motherlode of EG stuff, mate. I got a guy who sent me so much stuff, and then some other sources came along as well. But the problem was, it wasn't my type of story. Like, I'm not in the investigative journalism world. I did the other one, partly because fuck them because of the Kassad thing, and also because in League of Legends, no one had gotten to the bottom of that story, and I decided, right, if no one else is going to do it, I've heard some mad sus things, so I'll do it. I'll be the one that fucking gets the pickaxe and starts digging, right? But in this case, I know Richard's available, so I just This is one of those stories that's forward to Richard, and the amount of info was incredible. Like, mate, all I'll tell you, the reason why this article's fire and it's part 1 is because there was so much info, and it wasn't just like hearsay, like, and then I said, this dude, I won't say what medium, but they had like the fucking group messages of the people in question, what they were saying and what they were doing. Oh, it was amazing. This doc, I remember reading it and just being like, mate, sadly, this is essentially, it's just an org story. It's not about like the players. So I'm not going to do it. But I remember thinking, if Richard actually looks into this, he's going to have some fucking amazing. So I actually think, by the way, part 1 already's had some gems in. Like, for example, if you read through, stuff happens like this Jessica woman literally was saying to people in the org, yeah, your actual main mission here is just to protect the CEO, not even to win in the game. And then also, here's a detail if you haven't noticed, guys. When you read Richard's article, part 1, it's only part 1, guys. In part 1, he numbers the sources that are telling him stuff. Dude, at one point, he's up to source number 6. So all I'm going to say is, just buckle up, because if you hate EG, this is going to be like fucking Schadenfreude 1 million. It's going to be amazing. Like, there's so many stupid stories. And by the way, I'll just throw some in there. It was said behind the scenes from the league side, if you want to know what clowns EG are as. Think about how whack this is, Semmler. You know, in the modern day, even org owners and CEOs want to like flex on Twitter and banter people and ratio them and all that shit. Apparently, the woman who's the CEO of EG, this was a story that came out last year, not to do with this one. She would literally go into a group chat where their social media team were coming up with tweets for the Evil Geniuses account. And if a joke was really good, she would just take it and put it on her Twitter account as her tweet. That's the world we live in, mate. Isn't that insane? So think about that. That's like someone donking on you and they didn't even write the tweet. What? It's mental, innit? It's so mental. So just if you've been following this story, Richard's got it all, but he's just drip feeding you right now. He's going to keep giving you another article. And it's so good, so good. I'm loving it. It's mainly worth reading for comedic purposes, by the way, just to see how fucked up the org is and all the crazy shit they're doing, all the ego. It's not like the match fixing story. It's not like some massive thing that's going to change the world. But I thought it was very interesting reading those. So it'll just blow your mind that like a giant org with all those millions of dollars can run this way. You'll think it's mega amateurish, but it is. It just is, mate.
It just is, and to me, this just speaks of what the future holds.
Oh, it does, yeah.
This is all we can expect down the line, lads. This is all.
Oh, and by the way, I'll tell you this right now, Sam.
We're going to have more and more of these situations crop up.
This is even the lesson, sadly, from this as well. I'll tell you that it's a dark conclusion, but you have to take it. The lesson from this is this, Semmler. Everyone should hire female CEOs because you just don't get the same level of critique when you do the same thing wrong. Reginald from TSM, mate. You'd think he was like the devil, the way they treat him in League of Legends now. This woman can do worse things. She can ruin a player's life, potentially. Never get the same abuse. Never have the same people calling her out by name. In fact, you might not know this, but in League of Legends, it was even worse, dude. The conclusion they came to as a way to put the genie back in the bottle was that, yeah, it was kind of bad at EG, but it was mainly a systemic issue just in esports anyway. That's the conclusion they get. Because if they didn't, Semmler, they would have to focus on who did the crime, who did this to this person. And in this case, it was just a woman, unfortunately. And even worse than that, she was the one who checked a lot of boxes that people want checked. So as a result, the one thing they couldn't in their brains allow is that she was in some way responsible. So sadly, in a way, Semmler, this is actually sort of like what's going to come in esports. What will happen is they'll hire people who are from protected classes to be, by the way, this already happens in politics, guys, to be the person who fumbles and does the thing wrong or delivers the bad news, but you won't be allowed to critique them because when you do, they'll go, oh, you're always critiquing women, or something, and that'll be the shield forever. So this will sadly be the way it goes. But luckily, as long as there's Richard Lewis and people like that there, at least we'll get some funny stories. We'll get some of the bullshit will come out.
Listen, at this point, dude, it is just a matter of sitting back, tipping a cold one back and enjoying the show. Because there's going to be so many more of these, and not just in esports, but everywhere. This is just going to be the new trend of how things go. So, but okay. Read it if you get a chance. Obviously, the link is going to be below down in the description. And I'm sure if you're watching this, you're probably following. Although maybe not. I don't know. If I read Reddit, it seems like every Richard fan has stopped listening to this show. So, fair enough. Maybe you aren't going to miss it, but you are following Richard to begin with, so you're in the good. All right. Do you reckon? I think it's a good time to get into some questions. By subscribing on Discord, there is an active Discord channel for Last Free Nation. There's loads of people commenting all the time. But if you want that extra little step of notoriety, you can support us directly there by subscribing. And that goes directly towards Last Free Nation. That goes directly towards supporting the show. And you also get to ask a question each week for Revenge by the Numbers. Now, Revenge by the Numbers right now isn't happening on a week-to-week basis. But obviously, the questions gather up. If you have a question, throw it in there, and we will answer it when we get into the next show. So let's get into it. So kicking off the questions, Blaz, if you could take anyone from history, who would you have design an esports stadium, design the trophy, and who would you have design the jerseys and clothes for the players and talent?
Genghis Khan.
No. I was gonna say Jodorowsky for you.
Okay.
Yeah, because
the problem with that is like I don't know what the like. Here's what we'll do. I sometimes do this on my AMA. What I have to do now is educate you in how to ask an interesting question. The flaw you made there in your question is you didn't give us a reason. You didn't give like a framing as to why we'd do this. Like what you should have said was something like, I don't like the current design of esports things, or maybe I think, it's too like sports with the trophies or something, or give us a reason why, or a reason why we would want it differently. Because at the moment you're just saying like, who would you pick to design a trophy? I don't know, fucking Billy Big Balls trophy designer #1. Like I wouldn't put a lot of thought into it, man. I'm not the guy, I don't really give a fuck. So if we do your angle, like if we had some guy to make it crazy, yeah, maybe like Mobius, some like crazy comic size. I mean, he's dead now, but you know what I mean? Someone who would do something unique. Yeah, that would be cool, but I don't really get the premise of the question. I don't know why I'm doing this. This is the problem,
It does says if you could take anyone from history, who would
anyone from history? Exactly. So that's why I did the stupid answer in it. It's like whatever. Well, Leonardo da Vinci. There you go.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Probably do a pretty good job.
You know what? We just need to go back to the Colosseum, the Romans. I feel like they had a great aesthetic, and also if you lost, you got eaten by tigers. So that maybe added a level of that added a level of intensity to the matches.
You just know there was some wanker back then, Ryan at Push fucking bloodletting, who was probably like, it's only bloody feeding Christians to tigers. Don't take it so seriously, bloody hell, like. And you're like, at least wear a toga for fuck's sake. Wrap the toga up, like whatever. You get what I'm saying? It's all. Meanwhile, Anders is like, right, even if I do actually die and get eaten by lions, I need like twice the day rate. It's like, or I'm going to go and get eaten by lions in fucking Judea or something like.
He needs at least 3 polos a day.
Exactly.
All right. Banger.
What was that Judas on? 12 pieces of silver. I want 24. Good old Anders. Oh, love Anders, by the way. I do miss Anders.
Yeah, dude. I had him on the phone the other day. He's doing well. And he's casting this Brazzy party.
All right. Okay.
Right now. So happy to see that. All right. Architect of Korean esports based Joe. What is justice? All right.
Well, that's actually a very interesting question if you think about it, Semmler, because the angle people wouldn't understand, it's actually a very, very central point, which is if people don't know, almost all philosophical thought is stacked on top of each other. It's never usually just one person. What happens is one person came along and, like, for example, studied Plato and then became a Neoplatonist, or if they're Nietzsche, they followed the people of the 18th and 19th century. And what happens is, essentially, if you follow philosophy, you can't just start at the end. You have to ask, where did they begin? So for a topic like this, Semmler, it's actually the whole reason why in the modern day, people have become unmoored and anything is permitted. Because ultimately, the notion of like justice is going to be something like you make sure that the right things are done or things aren't done in the wrong way. But the question is, what is right and wrong? Well, right and wrong is going to have some sort of absolute basis, isn't it? So where's that going to come from? Now, in this case, obviously the historical answer is God or some sort of religious tradition. But in the modern day, if you want to be like a Christopher Hitchens, I always thought, by the way, that was actually the weakest argument Christopher Hitchens used to make, was the angle of sort of like, oh, I don't need any of these like historical traditions to have all these like opinions about like, and it's like, you do though, Christopher. You wouldn't have those 6,000 years ago in a desert. You wouldn't sit on a rock, Christopher, and go, I think that actually we should be fair to the poor because they don't have as much. You wouldn't do that. That would not ever be the conclusion you'd come to. So exactly. I have always wondered, I would actually flip it back on people who essentially don't believe any spiritual component exists. And I would say to them, how could you ever have justice? Because you don't have truth. You don't have right. These things don't exist. They're just ideas to you, surely. Well,
isn't the argument that for them, they fall back on evolution, i.e. these traits naturally evolved through time because they allowed for the highest chance of survival?
I always thought that one didn't work though, Semmler, because here's the part that doesn't work about that. By their own logic, there could be traits which do actually let you survive and continue on, but might be something like you might be a sort of like fucked up serial killer or something where you only do harm, but it never affects you and your offspring continue on. In that scenario, I would say that's not a great argument if you want to talk about things like justice and right and wrong, right? Because sometimes things in the real world might be efficacious that aren't good. They're not a nice thing to happen, are they? You know?
Yeah,
I mean, by that, and also, if someone takes that opinion of evolution, all I'll say is this: by your own logic, then it's actually good that, like, for example, you know that famous thing where, like, there's like a type of bug that like lays its larvae inside another insect while it's alive, and then like the larva eats out from inside. That's good according to you. That's justice. That's right. That's morally true. Like, I think that's fucking. I have trouble with that, mate. I see that and I go, that looks fucking like that. That looks evil in a way.
In a way, yeah, it does.
Yeah, in a way, right? You know.
It's
what do you think? What would your answer be if someone asked you that question? Like, quick answer. Essentially, if Matt Walsh was like, "What is justice, Semmler?" What would you say? What would you answer?
That's the thing. It's just, I mean, I'm just so. I mean, again, it comes back to your question of what is just, and then that was I mean, I did the same. I went through the same path, or at least went through that path of back in the early 2010s, where you're like, oh, the neo atheists, oh, they're the hot shit, and they have all the best repartee, they have the best zingers, they have the best everything, you know, clearly they're the smartest. And then obviously, if you actually start looking into this topic, because in your ignorance, you just assume that everything that's happening now is the most important thing ever, and you know that we're at the cutting edge of progress and all that. But if you actually took 2 seconds to look into the topic for yourself, you'd realize that these are questions that have been discussed ad infinitum for 2,000 years, well, for thousands of years. And so nothing is new under the sun, and that these discussions have been had over and over and over again. And that the point that you just made, i.e., how do you determine what is your moral North Star? How do
what's
you
the foundation? Yeah.
Turning 360 degrees
Yes.
ad infinitum is you need to have that, we could say being, you just need to have that set of rules that everybody agrees on, right? That you cannot argue with, in the sense that this is outside of your purview. This is just how it is. And then you can discuss within that framework, but now you have the framework to operate in. And as soon as that argument got made, and that kind of like a switch got flipped in my mind, that's when it all started to make sense. Because before that, you're absolutely right. You have no way to judge what is right and what is wrong, because hey, if you want to walk out and start killing people, well, then who's to judge? You know, it doesn't matter if that is advantageous to you, as you say. There's nothing stopping you at that point. And if anything, in a society where that is favored, well, that gets you ahead. So
mate, just look at the literal group you referred to, the new atheists, and how they have been completely tossed to and fro these last 5 or 6 years with every one of these fucked up societal progressions. Like, the joke is, even though against religion they were the bulwark, they're not a bulwark against anything else, because they have no foundation, like you say. Essentially, whatever is popular, they just have to go along with. They have no choice.
They have absolutely no leg to stand on, no moral leg to stand on either. I mean, Sam Harris is a shambles. It's utterly ridiculous. Like, he just keeps going lower. You think he's hit you think he's in the basement somewhere? No. He's been digging. He's still going. So no, it's tragic to see the state that those guys are in. And well, I mean, yeah, we could talk about that, but that's a subject for another time. Okay, exactly. As someone who was not watching CSGO in 2016-17, how does KSCERATO's current form compare to Coldzera's peak form? Seems like they are both becoming Brazilian heroes at this point.
This is a big topic that goes on. Essentially, it's a bit like what happened. If you don't know, this is how Yanko got flamed by art. Everyone at the moment loves KSCERATO's game because he is just the best Brazilian player. He's really good right now. He's one of the best riflers in the world. And because of that, we all look at Furia, and it's kind of like what we do with Shiro and Axile and Cloud9. It's like, come on, the Fani. If you have those two guys, you can't be fucking coming last place at tournaments. So same thing with Furia. If you've got KSCERATO, and look, Yuri sometimes plays up to, sometimes doesn't. If you've got those two players, you should be in the mix. You shouldn't be coming 8th place at every bloody tournament. So the problem is, when Yanko talks about, like, he was the one who said maybe KSCERATO's like better than Prime Coldzera, right? To an idiot, they're not going to be able to get past the fact that Coldzera's team was better. Coldzera was winning championships, and therefore Coldzera must be better. No, what Yanko's saying is, if you do the eye test and you look at their game, like, to me, Coldzera was a master of the game. He had all-round game. But part of what was amazing about him was how the way he used his brain and the way he understood how his opponent would play, and he played off his teammates. KSCERATO is just a pure talent, guys. Like, his eye test is one of the best I've ever seen from a Brazilian player. He is unfucking believably mechanically good, consistent. He seems to know his own game inside out. So the problem is, I actually sort of agree with it. If I'm going just on pure ability, I think KSCERATO now seems better than Prime Coldzera. The problem is, KSCERATO now doesn't have the team Coldzera. Coldzera had an incredible team. Every piece was good. He had the IGL, he had the AWP, he had the support. KSCERATO has like a couple of these things, and he doesn't have the same platform to perform on. So I don't think it's an unfair comparison. Yeah, he doesn't have one. Exactly.
The story, the lesson that Coldzera learned is that it's the friends that you make along the way that that make you stronger.
Yeah, that's also the other angle as well, Semmler. I think you've seen it in his career. When you took Coldzera and put him on other teams, he was a good player, but he wasn't exceptional. KSCERATO, this is also why I think it's a difference. I think if you put him in like FaZe tomorrow, mate, he'd be fucking fragging out. He'd be one of the best players in the world. He would start winning tournaments, mate. Of course he would. He just looks unbelievably good.
I think so too. All right, GB. GB. Which CSGO team from which year was your favorite to watch and why?
Even though it's a boring answer, I'd probably just go with Astralis 2018. That's a classic one. There's the thing. That's just because I like tactical Counter-Strike. So I love the way they broke the game down, the way they fought against opponents. I always thought what was cool about that team was you could see when they were having a game where people weren't individually popping off, but because they had everything else in their fucking toolkit, they could get back in the game. They could win the game. They could withstand the opponent. Another one is obviously why I love Existence. I love the old Very Games lineups. Like if you go back to the one with Shocks and Scream and it was the shit. Yeah, those were great times. Also another great tactical team, but with brilliant players. I always thought what made the French teams fascinating to me, Semmler, was like, I always knew, even though Existence wants to do like pure tactics, Danish style, someone like Shocks wants to be more like the star player who has the freedom. So it was like the interplay was also fascinating because you knew there was a dynamic going on there and which one wins out and what works better. And so it almost felt like that the story for those teams was really, really interesting to follow, I think, as well as the game was great to watch too.
Agreed. If anything, though, I had
give me another one. Give me another team. Who would you put in?
Well, I had the most fun watching FaZe on their route to the major title win. So for me, it's like I just enjoyed it. They had the clutch. They had the inspiring play. They had the clutch factor. They had Kerrigan, who was just this incredible leader. I mean, they had it all for me. And they are this international team, and so I was also rooting for them along those lines because just to see if it's possible for an international team to actually win a massive tournament like a major, because that is something that is revolutionary. The fact that Kerrigan was able to pull this off. Because
people don't know.
Most major winners are all national teams. It's Brazilian or it's French.
Dude,
or it's
I don't know if you know this, but Chad had a famous bet like that on HLTV Confirmed a few years ago. Before they made this FaZe lineup, Semmler, there was a bet that Sponge did on HLTV Confirmed where he bet that in like something like in the next 3 years, whatever this was, that there wouldn't be an international team would be like #1 in the world or #1 for a certain amount of time, right? Now, his bet wasn't bad, Semmler. If it wasn't FaZe, it never would happen. But unfortunately for him, Kerrigan came back. Then he got robbed. And he it's like he got like almost the nightmare scenario where the one team that could have done it came along and did it in the time span he was talking about. But I can see why he made the bet. Like what I'm pointing out is it was a legit bet from Chad. What he was sort of pointing out is no one's ever done this with an international team. Like it really is that it clearly is like 1.5 times harder than having just a team from your country in it.
All right, weakest. Will esports pros ever learn when and how to retire gracefully? Has there been any who have in the past? Thanks, lads. Yeah, I don't
think so. It's very rare that people actually retire early, isn't it?
Or retire gracefully, not early. As in, I don't get the whole gracefully thing. I mean, to me, there's a couple like Neo retire. I don't remember any drama around Neo retiring.
But the problem is at the end he was in that FaZe lineup that was shit, if you remember. So
yeah,
people wouldn't count that as graceful.
Gracefully, is it just right off?
I know what he means.
And that's it. Like Markov, just
no. I would even say I would say they wouldn't say when they mean graceful, they mean as in you retire before you're bad.
Okay.
Which so let's be real, nobody does that. Nobody does that in CS.
Everybody
in CS at least they don't. Maybe in other games they do it. In CS, nobody does that. Because here's the other problem. There's actually a very logical reason they don't do it, Semmler. I'll give you the analogy. Right? Do you know how many basketball players from the 1980s and 1990s are really pissed off that they would be the best player in the world, but they got like $800,000 a year? Exactly. Whereas now you come out of high school and you can get like an $80 million contract. Well, what that means is if you were a player, and a lot of them did this, by the way, in the modern day, nobody retires early because every year you play, dude, at the point now, I think the minimum's $1 million. Or like the veteran minimum might be like 500k a year or something. So some of them will even play just to be on the bench and not play. Like the point is, at that point, you just think that's just a fucking good job, isn't it? Like I'll just take this gig. And I've told this story in the past. It's the reason why back in the day I used to ask people like Marklov and Adren from Kazakhstan. I would sometimes say to them like, don't you guys ever think about just retiring though? Because like your peak was so much higher when you were on top, whereas now you're sort of playing, you know, you're almost like a jobber. You're just in a team and you're just not even the best player. But they basically told me like, yeah, but what would I do? I'm like 28. I'm going to go get a real life job in my country. Remember, Adren's from Kazakhstan, fucking Marklov's from Eastern Ukraine, right? In that scenario, what they're going to make from their real life job, which they won't have any experience for, by the way, they've been playing video games their whole life, is they're going to make for real, like $400 a month, guys. So if instead someone tells them, by the way, you make $3,000 a month if you keep playing CS, even if you're bad, they're going to just view it as a job at that point. They don't care about what you're saying, this fan. Like, yeah, but I won't quite remember my hero. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about, tell you what, that $4,000 will cover the rent. You know?
Practical terms.
Yeah, exactly. I don't blame them in that sense. I sort of get it.
No, exactly.
You know?
I mean, if you're a pro player, just ride it for as long as you can. Keep going. I mean,
like Dossier, mate, it was only a couple of years ago. He was still playing. He was playing that fucking Mustang team or whatever. He just decided he wanted all the checks, I could tell. He wanted all the checks.
Artisan, as two gentlemen with ability to grow an amazing beard, do you use any products to keep it looking slick? Oils, balms, trimmers?
Dude, you know those memes? I do love them online, where it's like women after they've used every skincare product and they've got like all acne. And then it's like men after they like, you know, wipe their face with the towel that they clean their ass with, and it's just like perfect skin. Like that is how it is, guys. I've almost never done any sort of, I don't put anything in my beard and that. It's just sort of easy to look decent in it. I don't know how, just lucky, I guess, mate.
It is. And it is unfair in that sense. You're right.
It is fucked up in it because I use like every fucking skin thing, and then we're just like.
Yeah, no, but then again, you know, men can look more rugged. We're not that. We're not viewed in the same way.
Yes.
Never really did any of it. No, oils, balms, trimmers. Yeah, sure, trimmed it every now and again, but never anything else. All right, Franny boy, what's a past org that you wish would still be around?
Already said it, bro. Very games. Because if people don't know, that's also just the most legendary source org. So like, I also think it's cool when you have orgs that have past history. Like, I want people like SK Gaming to be in the game against Semmler, and like people with super long histories. I would have hated it if Fnatic had left CSGO. All the great orgs, you want them there because you can't replace their history. It would be like starting the NBA again tomorrow. You got no Boston Celtics and no Lakers. Like, dude, they are the NBA. Like, that's the history of the sport, isn't it? So I would just say very games because they're old schools. Is there someone else you can think of? Who's not here now that you would like to come back? Were you a fan of North FC?
North?
No. I'm a fan of North. Oh, that's still the most egregious rebranding of all time, isn't it? Why did they do that? Because the old one was quite cool. It was like sort of like, you know, it was actually like sort of pagan Nordic style, the old one. Then it was like, and I'm North. It's like, what's it?
No, dude. And then they start doing it. They just, you know, a player leaves the roster, and then they give him like the Viking burial send off. You're like, what?
Yes,
did he die? What the fuck is this? Like that whole org from top to bottom was just
wild, wasn't
a
it?
disaster. No, I don't need to see North back.
I'll tell you actually what I wouldn't mind having come back. How about Optic? Dude, they always had a very healthy fan base, right? You're
going there, yeah. It's kind of like Optic or Envy,
Envy's a good one too.
And his antics, yeah. But Hastro gets too personally involved with the teams. Like he gets so involved in the teams, the players. Oh, you know how they're doing all that. When I think it was probably one of the more stressful times that he's ever had when he had the French teams going for Envy, man. Because that was in prime time when the French teams were just shanking each other and it got real nasty.
The worst. Yeah,
so,
he got the worst end of it, unfortunately.
Poor Hastro.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, I mean, it might be one of those orgs that's coming into that's coming from another game. If we want to talk about growing viewership, growing interest in CS, that sort of thing, you know, it's bringing fans potentially from other games into it. That could have been it. One of the Optics, something like that. Let's see. Darius, how does the combination of coach and IGL influence the way both are reviewed by pundits at CSGO? For example, the departure of Zonic from Astralis and Glaive's record starting there.
I mean, it doesn't, sadly. Like, people don't seem to ever factor it in. Like, I notice whenever anyone has that discussion, somewhere like, but Carrigan can't be the GOAT because he has one major and Glaive has 4. Didn't you guys tell me that Glaive had the greatest coach of all time? Does that not count for anything? Like, how can Sonic be the greatest coach of all time, but also didn't do anything? Which is it? Like, if he did something, you have to factor it in. So I agree with the sentiment. It should. I would hope people would factor it in the same way as whenever you're in team sport, you have to look at all components. Like, it's not even just players, Semmler. You even have to think of things like, what org did you play for? Like, if you play for an org without money, you're not going to have the same opportunity to replace players. You can't buy the best teammate, So I think every factor should be considered. It's just what you got to do if you got to weight the factors. You know what I mean? So certain ones matter more. Like, I think coach matters quite a lot. Yeah, of course. But at certain things like, I feel like people, just to make it simple, just make the variables simple. So they go, how many trophies did he win? And then that's easy. 8 is more than 6, isn't it? So the guy with 8 wins. But I think it's not a very nuanced approach to the analysis, is it?
Oh. And that is, I mean, these kinds of connections, I don't feel like, do we have, because
we're also guessing about coaches, right? It's hard to know what they're doing, isn't it? We're also just speculating.
Exactly, because, it's not often that you actually get to have long form interviews with coaches where they really do give you the dirt on everything that's happening.
And we don't ever get to hear any of the comms from the fucking timeouts or anything. So if they're ever saying something genius, we don't know, do we? Sadly, that's one thing, that we've still never got in the game. There's sports where you can, when, like, I don't know if you know this, Semmler, in the NFL, when it's like a week after the game, they release like a mic'd up video where you hear them even sometimes call the player, like, let's do that route here, something like, that would be awesome if we get that in CSGO. Imagine if during Prime Astralis we knew what Sonic was saying, and sometimes, like, maybe he made an adjustment that, like, won the game. That would change this whole conversation, wouldn't it?
I would. All right. Let's see. Forgive me. Okay. Porthos, what novel needs a better movie or TV adaptation?
I mean, I think an easy one to me would be, because I think the movie was actual shit for this, is Ender's Game. It's a fucking banging book. That movie was garbage, man.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be an awesome TV series? If, like, HBO did fucking Ender's Game, like 10 parts or something.
Especially
That'd be
because,
fire, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, especially because there's like, how many books? 10?
Oh, there's a load of books
7?
you could do as well,
7 or 8?
You could keep
7
it
or 8
going.
that are written by him, and then I think it was his son that took over and kind of fucked it up, or am I thinking?
Oh, they're thinking of Dune.
No, I'm thinking of Dune, yeah.
But there was like 4 or 5 books at least, I think.
Yeah. I've got most of them on my shelf over here, and man, just so good. There's so much depth to it.
Oh, it's mega.
The one that I'm thinking of now that you mention it, and that I didn't even bother watching. And this is a series that I read and reread growing up.
Come on.
All-time favorite that I loved. The Wheel of Time.
Oh, right. By the way, that was an atrocious fucking TV show.
I knew that they were going to
do. Don't bother. It was really bad. It was really bad.
Fucking crowbar every fucking checkpoint, checkmark they could into that. So I didn't even bother. Well, I don't know if you've picked up on this trend, guys, but I don't really watch anything new, any of the new shit anymore. Pretty much, like I rarely, if ever, go to the movie theater at all. I think the last time I was at the movie theater was to watch the Dune movie. That was it. And apart from that, I'm not watching anything new. So I already knew at the gates that this was going to be garbage, but that is like the series, the books are amazing, are excellent. And I think we talked about this in the past where it's like you have the Wheel of Time that's awesome in like young teens to mid-teens kind of thing. And then you can go into like Lord of the Rings where you start getting really getting your teeth into it. And then you also have Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is another bit more like, let's say R-rated rather than like the PG-13 of Wheel of Time. But Wheel of Time is just so good. You can do so much there. It could be epic. And then the other one, and you may not, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but the Dresden Files.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah, I think you might have even no. Actually, I think the person who recommended this, believe it or not, was like In Control. I think was a massive fan of the Dresden Files.
Yeah, he was a big fan.
I think I asked you one time, and you told me it was like one of those ones where it's like a detective with like magic elements in the universe. Right?
Dude, it would be you. There's so like I mean, he's just done a terrific job of actually building out that whole universe. Is just unreal. The amount of work that he's gone into it, and he pulls from everything. Jim Butcher, he pulls from all of the different lores, the folklore, myths, legend, religion, everything. He pulls from it all and brings it into this place in Chicago where you have just a lone wizard who's a detective. And then he eventually gets some sidekicks, he adds a bit to it. And it is awesome. It is so good. And the books are written in such a way that they're just awesome books to just read. They're just you don't need to think too much about it. It's just pure raw entertainment. If you literally follow the books one for one, it'd be a killer series. It would be a killer TV series. And then they did one, and it was a disaster because they had to change their shit. They had to change it. Instead of a staff, he had a hockey stick because they had to make it more of like the everyman or whatever. It It was so bad, so bad. I was so disappointed. So those would be like two that come to mind where it's like, if you were to do those right, you could just do epic series out of them, and it'd be so sick. But of course, they're not going to do that. All right, what else we got here? Lord Forest. Thorin, I really enjoyed your interview with Daps earlier this week. At the time of writing this, Optic was my introduction to esports, starting with COD, and also my introduction to CSGO. Do either of you think there is a future where Optic... Well, we were just talking about this cross-pollination of fans. Do either of you think that there is a future where Optic returns to CSGO CS2? Obviously, it's up to Hex and whoever's in charge, but I would love to hear y'all's takes. Well, there we go. I mean, we kind of answered that one before a little bit.
The problem, as far as I know, Semmler, is it's basically the reason why Flashpoint failed is those NA orgs just don't want to gamble on CS. Richard always talks about how the NA organs like to play the game on easy mode. And to them, easy mode means you have like a league system where the VC guy pays and you essentially don't gamble your own money. In CSGO, you had to pay basically sort of your own money, and then it wasn't the same system. Like you play the rest of the circuit too. So the issue is most of those NA orgs, like for example, they'd rather be in Valorant than CSGO. So right now, I feel like they're not going to come back. I'd love them all to come back, mate. I'd love Gen G, NRG, fucking TSM, Optic. Let's get them all back in CLG. I mean, CLG is gone now, but you know what I mean? All these orgs can come back, but I get the vibe they're not going to. I think they'd rather be in every other game except CS at the moment.
It may be due to the Louvre agreement. I mean, if you're not in the Louvre, that might as well be a franchise league. If you're not there, then it's going to be very hard for you to be picking up a team. Like right now, TSM are making noises about wanting to join or wanting to come back into CSGO. The obvious question is, okay, how? Without spending millions to get a slot and then buying a tier 1 team. It feels like the cost of doing business in CSGO just to get your foot in the door is so high that it may not be worth the squeeze, right? The juice may not be worth the squeeze. So it's we're going to have some barriers to see some of these bigger brands get involved, I think, at least for the time being in the short term. ELT. As the CSGO era of competitive CS draws to a close, who would you consider as lock-in inductees for Global Offensive Hall of Fame? How would you personally curate entrance as to keep it a prestigious accomplishment and not let it become a bloated list that simply acknowledges any modicum of success in the game?
I think I'm the only one who could do this, mate. And the real reason why is because I've made a massive component of my philosophy on team games to separate out who did the heavy lifting in team games. So essentially the problem is this, Semmler. If most people would take absolute resume, so for example, immediately players that would be overrated would be like Zipnix and Glaive because they have all the same accomplishments as Device does. But the problem is on that list, you're really judging Device by those tournaments, if you know what I mean. So essentially, I would do it like that. It's actually what they do in real sports anyway. But I think what you have to do is you have to take into account like individual play mixed with accomplishments. So the real problem is like, one thing you also have to do, and this is why in the modern day you won't see this in esports. In esports, they won't actually make it a limited group of people because they don't want to upset fans. They want to be popular, right? I don't know if you know this, but in all traditional Hall of Fames, there is always enormous debate and outrage over the people who are like borderline who don't make it in. So there's people who are like had an amazing career, but the problem is, this is the point. There's a great line they say in the NFL. In the NFL, they say it's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Very Good. Like you might have been on a very good career, but the point is it's supposed to be the absolute greatest to ever compete. So essentially I would make it quite exclusive like that. So I'll give you like a random example. I'll just pick one off the top of my head. Like the difference is someone like, let me think who would be a good case here. I mean, whatever, you can pick someone who'd go in. Everyone knows the people who'd go in. Like obviously like Twistzz would be in, right? But then someone like maybe, what would be more debatable? Who's like a borderline person? Who?
FNX for one of the Brazilians.
Yeah, I mean, third probably making. Yeah, someone like FNX, that's a good shout. FNX is a good shout. You only basically had like a year at the top, like you know what I mean. Like, and the rest of that, even then, he wasn't the best player. Yeah, someone like FNX would probably actually not make it into a CS:GO one. He'd make it a 1.61. He wouldn't make it into a CS:GO. Now that would make people upset, but I think that's fair enough. I don't think. By the way, Fiflaren probably wouldn't make it in. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't the one doing all that shit. So sorry. Here's the difference, guys. Believe it or not, someone like MSL would get in over Fiflaren. Dude, MSL was like the IGL who won those championships. Like he had a lot of influence. Fiflaren sometimes was more the one just chilling. So basically, this is why I actually think to do it, you have to do it a very specific way. By the way, just as an aside, it'll obviously depend on funding of the company and stuff. One day I do want to do my own Hall of Fame. Because what I've decided is I'm so sick of everyone else doing it fucked up. And in the modern day, they've also ruined it now, Semmler, because they just do it on the whole fucking inclusivity angle. So, like, for example, unironically, in CSGO, there are Hall of Fames that have put in female observers of CSGO over Get Right.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
I can't.
yes.
I not only can't tolerate that, I will not tolerate that. So when I see you do that, then I will use my platform to make the world know your Hall of Fame is illegitimate. So if you know me, I don't just criticize. If I can do it myself, I'll just do it myself. So I'll probably figure out some way to do my own Hall of Fame, but I'll make it legit. So there's the other thing. One last thing to say as well as this. For my Hall of Fame, I would also honor what I actually think is a very good tradition in real sports, which is the order you go into the Hall of Fame is also very important, because it's supposed to be that the most prestigious players get like the instant Hall of Fame status, right? So for example, if I made my Hall of Fame tomorrow and it was like a CSGO one, Semmler, I would start with Coldzera and Get Right, and people assuming they're retired, obviously, you know, I would start with the greats like that. I wouldn't just put like random, I would make it so that like, it's almost like we're counting down the greatest players ever, and we make sure we get all of them in, but we still keep it that exclusive club.
I mean, you have to. I mean, dude, it's so. Again, it just shows you that the people who are now operating these award ceremonies, they have ulterior motives.
They do.
It's
I've been in those convos. I've been in the meetings. They do.
Yes,
they really
they have
do.
ulterior motives. It's not about what they say that it is. They're up to something else, and it's just a shame because it just trivializes the whole thing. And to be fair, I think it's like the bigotry of lowered expectations, or it's demeaning.
It literally is
for the people. It's demeaning for the people that they in their eyes. Oh, we're honoring them. It's like, no, you're doing the exact opposite, because anybody with eyes to see can tell that this person shouldn't be there. Does it mean that they weren't good at what they were doing? Yes, but again, like you say, Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Good. It's not the Hall of Better. It's the Hall of Fame, as in this is the very best by objective standards. These are the very best. So,
dude, if I showed you some of the examples, I'll do a video on it one day, because it's actually a good topic for a video, to be fair. I'll write it down. I'll make it one day. Basically, if you saw how egregious some of the examples are, though, Semmler, like basically, I'll give you the real world example. I'll give you an esports example, right? The real world example. Imagine if this happened, Semmler. Imagine if they started the Hall of Fame for basketball today and they didn't put Michael Jordan in, but they put in the first female referee. Now, that is essentially what they have done in esports, because in esports halls of fame, right, we all know Boxer always gets in because he's such a massive name, right? People won't know this, Semmler, because people who are casuals won't know Brood War. In Brood War, Boxer won 3 titles. The guy who won the most was called Nada, and he was a rival of Boxer.
Yes.
Now, Nada is Michael Jordan in that analogy. He doesn't get in Hall of Fames, even though, by the way, if you were going by names, he'd be like top 3. Instant out of StarCraft. He doesn't even get in them. He's not in any of the Hall of Fames, to my knowledge. Meanwhile, they will put in like someone who was in there, like they'll even put in, like, forget even the female angle. They'll just put in stuff like a commentator. And I'm like, a commentator for fucking COD is in over Nada. Like, what are we even doing with this Hall of Fame at this point in time? Like, it's just essentially like a popularity contest now. It's not even how good you were at the bloody game. Like, the one thing you've got to do is honor the bloody great players in history who won everything, for fuck's sake. Like, the reason I give that example is because Nada's like a slam dunk to get in. If you don't know, guys, that would be in Counter-Strike. Like, if you made a CSGO Hall of Fame and you don't put like Simple and fucking Nico in or whatever, like, what are you doing with your Hall of Fame?
I think that you need to control your urge, your base instinct to discriminate. I mean, you need to. It is about popularity now. There is no objective metric to go off of in terms of like who is legitimately better, and here are the stats to prove it. It is what fits the current narrative, or what fits the most.
It definitely looks like they used a focus group or something, like, oh, these are the names that people want to see in the Hall of Fame. It almost felt like that, yeah.
All right, Richard Hag. What is the most significant issue with your co-host that you would not be able to ignore if they were a lesser friend?
Here's the thing: they're just asking questions now to be dicks, aren't they? Like, oh,
yeah, what fucking question is that?
If your co-host fucked your wife, what would you think of him? It's like, what the fuck's the question? What the hell's this premise? Like, well, that's not happened ever in any context. That's it. Like, what the fuck? People, here's the thing, Semmler. This is the downside of the internet. This is how you know people are just mad antisocial on the internet. Like, who would ever ask that question? What level of tact do you operate on, my dude? Like, is the one, Semmler?
Don't even fuck off. No, just fuck off with the question. I read your question.
Funny at least. It was funny at least. Fair enough. We'll give you that.
Toby. If each team in history had a transfer value, the amount it would take to buy all 5 players, what teams in history were the most valuable?
I feel like in theory it should be like the first phase super team. You remember the one where it was Carrigan, Nico, Guardian, Rain, and fucking Olafmeister? Oh, they would have insane buyouts, wouldn't they? That's what
that is sick.
That's a pretty good one right there, mate. Because normally on the other teams you can have one player that wouldn't have a big buyout, would he? You know, like surely every one of those players would be marquee value. You know.
I mean, I think that you have to mention the Golden Arrow Astralis. You'd have to, with how dominant they were as a 5-man unit, right? No roster changes.
I can also tell you, actually, I've told the story before.
Obviously, that would be post the first major win. But
yeah, if you remember, during Flashpoint, I mean, I've told this story. There was a rumor that, I'll just say it outright. Cloud9 was going to buy Astralis, the whole team, the entire winning lineup that won the majors. And by the way, the price would have been like 3 or 4 million or something. It would have been millions of dollars. So, essentially, yeah, there was times where they could have been sold for that type of money, Semmler. Absolutely.
Really makes you wonder. VG.
That's the one if. By the way, think about that if you're a fan. It's not just that Flashpoint didn't succeed and Stars didn't join the Scooters. It's worse than that. I was being told, don't worry, we're going to buy Astralis. So I was thinking the whole time, the cavalry's coming over the hill, aren't they? Like all the ESL's going to be like, oh, we're winning. And then the fucking Astralis, like Gandalf the White, just rides over the hill. And I've got like the greatest team of all time in my league. Except I didn't. I got fucking screwed. Instead, Cloud9 went, oh, don't worry though. We'll get Henry G to make a lineup. That'll be good, Thorin. Yeah, cheers. How did that work out, eh? How's my Henry G today, dickhead? How's he today, dickhead?
VG man, are y'all a fan of the steampunk or cyberpunk aesthetic? Way more a fan of cyberpunk than steampunk.
Yeah, I've always found steampunk a little bit. I think cyberpunk's great. The only downside is this, Semmler. Sadly, just real world sort of like conspiracy things, I know, like ruin it a bit because I know there's like ulterior motives behind it. Well, you know, like in the 80s, like that's when it just seemed really cool. When all computers were just like a cool vista of everything would be better and technological and cool.
They were ruined.
Yeah, that seemed awesome. Yeah, that seemed
the internet used to be an awesome place. Now look at it. Fuck.
Like, mate, when I read Neuromancer, I remember just being like, holy shit, this is the best. What the fuck? When's this world going to come? And then you saw oh, it's not real. Oh, what the hell? This is not as good as Neuromancer. It's just some shit version of it, isn't it? Like all fucking NFTs and stuff. Like, oh, brilliant.
I mean, I've got like my aesthetic, the just my all-time favorite and will be my favorite aesthetic, just because they've had so many amazing artists throughout the years, is the Warhammer 40,000 aesthetic. Grimdark, cyberpunk, I don't know, futuristic, gothic. It's got it all. So, like, to me, the peak aesthetic is Warhammer 40K in the art. I've got the God Emperor on my screen here, so there you go. Snake Gold, favorite recent movie. What do we consider recent? Because
the problem with that is I've told this before. I don't really watch things based on like the time they come out. So maybe just how about a movie you watched recently? How about that? Oh, if you can think of one that's the last couple of years, is there anything like very recently?
Not that was made recently, but I guess Master and Commander is recent enough because the other one would obviously be Excalibur, but that's three decades old now, you know. So it's like, I don't know if that still counts as recent. But Master and Commander, I think, was made like 10 years ago. Yeah, Master and Commander, it's a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. I rewatched it again, and then I watched it again, and then I loved it so much that I literally rewatched it the following night with my wife for dinner. I was like, we're gonna watch this. Like, we need something to watch. We're gonna watch this. So yes, Master and Commander. If you need a good movie to watch, just an amazing movie, just flawless in every respect, go watch Master and Commander.
The problem is I'm having a hard time because, again, I haven't watched that many like more recent movies. So I'm trying to see if there's actually anything that's that good. Doesn't look like there is, actually, to be fair.
Like recently, I don't know. I rewatched Blade Runner, the latest Blade Runner again.
2049 one.
Yeah, I watched that. I watched Drive recently as well.
That's a bit overrated, but it's not bad.
It's a bit overrated.
Worth watching once at least. Worth watching once. I'm not sure. I don't think there is a really recent movie I've watched that was that good, to be fair. Because like I watched Tenet, but it wasn't really like my favorite one. It was good, but it wasn't my favorite. I don't think I have one for this. Whatever. I don't have an answer for this.
All good. Capsize.
Too long.
There is no way to objectively measure this, but if you have to pick one CSGO match result that had the biggest ripple effect on players' careers, which one will it be? Apart from that iBuyPower versus Netcode Guides match, of course.
If I pick one match that if you change sort of butterfly affects the whole game. I mean, an obvious one to me is if FaZe just held on and won the Boston Major. If Carrigan wins that major, Nico wins that major, and Guardian wins the major, doesn't that change everything in CS history? By the way, I'll even speculate, I always have. I always thought, dude, if they won that one extra round, I don't think Nico and Carrigan split up. I think they just fight. Because here's the thing, you know how the players are. If you've done like amazing things together, that sort of stays in your brain. And that's why if people don't know, that's the real reason why Shocks won't like kick Smiths for years, because he just remembers the good times. Like you just think, oh, we can get back there. So I think if they'd have sort of had that big moment together, I think it would have just made everything different with how it played out, you know. Then again, though, you could do the similar thing if you want to do it even. Here's another fun one. Let's just go back in time and take one of those TSM chokes and just have them win the game. What if TSM had won a major in 2015, mate? Wouldn't that be fucking everything changes then, right? Imagine that. They'd be 3 years ahead of schedule. Like, oh, it'd be mega. There's a lot of games you could pick for this. I think you could pick a lot of matches for this, right?
Olaf boost.
There's another one.
Olaf boost changes everything in terms of that storyline. LDLC may not even be like, it's just
and also, dude, people forget. They always miss the framing on the Olaf boost. What made the Olaf boost so significant is it was like the Joker origin story of the villain Fnatic. Because remember the story was a bunch of them were like, maybe we'd just retire. I don't like this abuse. But then they were like, no, actually, fuck fans like that. And you remember they used to come out on stage and they would just be like, ha, 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 whatever. And then they'd win the tournament anyway.
And then they win the tournament.
They were the best villains I've ever seen, mate. I love that shit.
Dude, I remember, Devilwalk, I remember how because none of the players came to the after party of that event, but Devilwalk came to the after party and he got blasted. And I remember just how fucking rage. It was like he was just enraged at how his team were getting treated over this. And it was just, there was no controlling it, because again, the way that it all played out is just ridiculous with how DreamHack ruled on that. It's not like they broke any rules.
There was some bullshit there.
It's just LDLC also had a triple boost if you remember, but theirs was a little shitter. Fnatic's was better. There you go. But Fnatic are the ones that get fucked. And that's just the way that it went down, dude. I still remember it to this day. And the thing is like, I wouldn't do it any other way. I listened to the cast not too long ago with Anders and I, just to like relive it a little bit. I wouldn't change a fucking thing, dude. I was so hyped when I saw that, because remember back then, it was still in a period where players were hiding shit for tournaments. They were still holding on, like holding strats for the tournament. That was real. That was real. They would hold on to flashes and smokes and boosts and everything for that critical game when they could use it and fuck their opponents up, and there wasn't anything their opponents could do because they'd never seen it before. So it's just like, holy shit, we're getting wrecked. And you were watching like the Mount Everest of that just happening, where it's just like round after round after round. I still remember it to this day, dude. It was so sick to watch because it was just this culmination. And then we came out of that match and everybody was like, oh, yeah, everybody was so mad. And, I remember some of the older veterans that there was like, this can't stand, DreamHack need to do something. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, what do they need to do? It was just such a weird, fascinating, just perfect storm. And also just how you could, I don't know, you can't placate the mob. I mean, it was the first experience of that sort of scenario as well, where you just saw just vitriol getting just thrown at players who didn't deserve it.
There's also one thing I always wondered, dude, because the obvious problem with that event is it had the whole ambience that even pro players at the time thought Fnatic players cheated as well before the boost. I always wondered, dude, what would happen if there hadn't have ever been the cheat accusations? What if the boost just happened on its own, and then it was more, no one had any bias against Fnatic, and then we'd have had to have the real discussion like we all talk about of like, well, how innovative can you be with a boost? Should you have to tell Valve? It would have been a great discussion, actually. It could have been a really key moment in CS, but sadly it did just get conflated with like, well, they probably cheat anyway, and they've done an illegal boost. Like, that was all tied in. Because I always felt like half of what people wanted to punish them for, Semmler, was thinking Fusha cheated, which wasn't connected to the boost, but it was sort of like, let's take these fuckers down. It was that vibe, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's a wild time. All right, Divorce lives in Lucky Shadow. What do you think of a Red Bull A or S tier event, or major in Counter-Strike? Their Red Bull Flick 2v2 tournaments had great production, in my opinion. Yeah, those were loads of fun. They built maps. They got players involved. I mean, as a community building kind of thing, really cool. The Red Bull events, and good production, fun to work with. It was awesome. The thing is that Red Bull, what they would do is they would what all they're doing is they're just contracting out to an independent production company to do that sort of thing. So one of them was like Copenhagen Flames. They were contracting the Copenhagen Flames media team to run it for them. It's not like Red Bull have their department that are running a Counter-Strike tournament, a production, their own production department running it. No, they're farming it out to white label companies that are in the space. So it wouldn't be here's how it would work. Red Bull will come in and they'll say, we want to run a tournament that's entirely branded by Red Bull. Hi, ESL. or hello, PGL. That's all it would be. It would just be a PGL run tournament. It wouldn't be a Red Bull tournament. It would just be, PGL running the show, and then you would get PGL level production or ESL level production or Black Molly or any of the others. It wouldn't be a Red Bull thing. And that was our last question for the week. So, well, there we have it. That's a show. Feeling good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet, dude. Well, thanks again for another show, and thanks everybody for those wonderful questions. Please subscribe to us on Discord. That supports the show directly, and it also, if you want to ask questions of your own each week, you can ask a question, and we'll do our best to answer them. And thanks everybody for the support as well on all the different platforms on YouTube and everywhere else. Leave a comment, leave us a review if you're listening as a podcast, because that really does help. The tickle the algo god. He's a ticklish beast, and he likes your attention. So give him a little attention. And I don't think that we'll be back next week, but perhaps the week after that. I mean, we're gonna be ramping up into major season, so we can actually start really discussing the major and everything around it as well. So this is gonna be pretty hype. But we'll see you next time.
Chris is still in the picture. Oh, still very much in the round.